I'm Fiona G. The White House addresses Apple's $500 billion investment, among other announcements, what they have to say about border security and government spending. Will there be a delay on the House's big budget vote? Speaker Mike Johnson says he'll work until the final moment to secure consensus within his party. The latest from both sides of the aisle. More than 20 civil service employees resigned from the Department of Government Efficiency. New York Governor Kathy Hochul offers an opportunity for those fired by the federal government. The UN Security Council adopts a U.S. drafted resolution, what it's about, and why Russia welcomes the move. Egg prices are surging, and that means some breakfast favorites are getting more expensive. Denny's has announced a temporary surcharge on meals that include eggs, citing the ongoing nationwide shortage.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
The U.S. Senate has confirmed Daniel Driscoll as Secretary of the Army today. He's an Iraq War veteran and advisor to Vice President J.D. Vance. The Senate voted 66 to 28 to confirm Driscoll, who served in the Army for 3.5 years, including a deployment in Iraq from October 2009 to July 2010. Several Democrats joined Republicans in backing President Donald Trump's nominee. After leaving the military, Driscoll attended Yale Law School, where he met Vance, and worked in finance. He also launched an unsuccessful bid for a North Carolina House of Representatives seat in 2020. President Trump approved a major disaster declaration for Kentucky Monday, following an initial emergency declaration just last week. This comes in the wake of deadly flooding amid freezing temperatures earlier this month. The president's action will make federal funding available for people in impacted areas. The assistance can include grants for temporary housing and other programs to help people and businesses recover. Federal funding will also be made available to the state and local governments and certain nonprofit organizations as well. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt just introduced a new policy for more media to be able to attend media briefings. NTD's correspondent Iris Tao now joins us live from the White House. Iris, what have you got for us?
Good afternoon to you as well, Fiona. So today, a big announcement from the press secretary in that press briefing just ended now at the White House. She announced that going forward, the White House press office will now determine who gets into what we call the pool, which is a selected group of reporters assigned to the president on a daily basis, on a rotation basis. But those are the ones who go into Oval Office remarks, his exclusive press conferences, that other journalists at the White House do not get that access to. Meanwhile, today, the White House says that going forward, the White House press office will select those who go into those events instead of the White House Correspondents Association, which has been for years determining who gets into the pool and, of course, the daily rotation of the pool. And the purpose of that, the press secretary says, is to make sure that a select group of D.C.-based journalists should no longer enjoy what she calls a monopoly of the privilege of press access at the White House, adding that all journalists, outlets, and voices deserve a seat at this highly coveted table. Of course, this follows decision by the White House starting on day one of this administration that they're going to allow in new media seats to the White House briefing room, allowing in more journalists of different formats, for example, podcasters, as well as other journalists with a huge online following, giving them also a seat at the briefing room to ask questions. Of course, those who already have been here, including the ones who are in the association who have assigned seats, they still will get their same access. It's just that now the pool will be determined by the press office instead. Meanwhile, today during the briefing, the White House press secretary also said this. Watch.
A select group of D.C.-based journalists should no longer have a monopoly over the privilege of press access at the White House. All journalists, outlets, and voices deserve a seat at this highly coveted table.
And Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt also defended the DOGE decision to send out emails through, of course, Office of Personnel Management to all federal employees, asking them to submit 5 bullet points of what they got done last week. The press secretary said that it's a very simple idea and that a taxpayer in the U.S. deserve that answer from these workers. She adds that President Trump, as well as Elon Musk and DOGE, are working as one unified team, of course, including the entire cabinet. Here's what she said. Watch.
All the Office of Personnel Management is asking, all this administration is asking, President Trump is asking, is for federal workers who live off of the American taxpayer's dime to send 5 bullet points of what they have done in the previous week. That is all we are asking for. We advise federal workers, unless your agency has dictated you not to respond to this email.
And the press secretary confirmed to us at the briefing that Elon Musk will be there at President Trump's first official cabinet meeting tomorrow. She says Elon Musk will be there to talk with the different secretaries of different departments to identify what they call waste, fraud, and abuse. Back to you.
Iris Tao, thank you. House Republicans are soon expected to vote on a budget resolution that unlocks President Trump's priorities on taxes, energy, border policies, and much more. Moments ago, Democrats railed against the measure, warning about impacts on Americans, while House leadership works to dispel what they say are lies. NTD's Melina Weiskup reports.
This afternoon, the Congressional Progressive Caucus led a large number of advocates railing against the potential downfalls of Republicans' budget plans. Democrats say that they're going to include tax changes that will benefit billionaires, paying for it through cuts to social safety programs like Medicaid. Republicans, meanwhile, say that's simply not true, and quite to the contrary, they say if they don't pass this budget, that Americans will be on the hook for the largest tax increase in history.
What House Republicans are trying to pass today is to steal from seniors, steal from children, steal from veterans, all to pay for tax cuts for the ultra-rich. That's what it is. They want to end Medicaid as we know it, just to pay for tax breaks for guys like Elon Musk.
The word Medicaid is not even in this bill. And it's a permanent rate at 21%. So we're not talking about the big multinational corporations. They're lying.
Now, even though Republicans' budget resolution does not include the specific policy changes, it's just setting the stage. It's a blueprint for that budget bill to come. It does guarantee $2 trillion worth of savings over 10 years. And some are concerned about where those savings will come from.
So that my seniors are going to be protected, that the developmentally disabled and other people with disabilities would be protected, and that my hospitals wouldn't see cuts that would affect the service that they provide in the community. So that's always been my concern, and as I get assurances and clarity, I'm moving more toward the yes in the process, but I'm not there yet.
And even as this vote is teed up for tonight at 6 p.m. as of this afternoon, there are still a large number of Republicans who are undecided on which way they'll vote. Congressman Thomas Massie came out of a closed-door meeting with Republicans this morning saying that meeting solidified his no vote. And with Republicans' slim majority, that means if Thomas Massie votes no and just one other Republican opposes it, this bill will tank. Because of that, now House Speaker Mike Johnson is wavering on whether or not they'll still hold that vote.
We are going to do this methodically. We're going to do it in a very responsible manner, and we're going to achieve these goals. And we'll be working with all the members throughout the day to get to that. There may be a vote tonight. There may not be. Stay tuned.
The vote is planned for 6 p.m. tonight, and we'll be watching to see whether or not it happens. If it doesn't, Speaker Johnson says he's committed to holding it sometime this week. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
We're going to stay on this topic. Joining us now is Mike Leon, our NTD News contributor and host of the podcast, Can We Please Talk? Mike, it is always great to see you. The latest on this, of course, is House Speaker Johnson saying that the vote might be delayed. So what's going on behind closed doors right now? How is the House Speaker trying to convince lawmakers?
Hey, Fiona, good to see you first and foremost. Yeah, this is the story of the day, and I know Speaker Johnson in the package there kind of cut off. He joked at the end. He told the reporters, "This is why you guys get paid, right, to cover this stuff." So, look, this is incredibly challenging to explain, but also to understand. I think this is part of the frustration that Americans, I know myself included, feel, because there's two parts to this. There's the budget process and what Donald Trump wants to enact. There's what the Senate and House has to approve, and the Senate Budget Committee, the House Budget Committee are all going through the different looks at these different bills and what it proposes, the tax cuts, et cetera, like Representative Nicole said from New York there. But then there's also the continuing resolution that we're facing a government shutdown potentially on March 14th and what Congress needs to pass on that front. So there's two different tracks right now, but the vote that's happening tonight, if it does happen tonight, I don't expect it will, because as just mentioned there, Representative Thomas Massie and a few others are in the no category. And as we know, Fiona, you can't afford to lose but one vote on the Republican side in this 218 to 215 majority that they enjoy right now. Republicans do. So I don't expect the vote to happen, but there's two different things that are happening that both need to be resolved over these next couple of weeks in order to fund the government, but then also to get Donald Trump's, budget in line for 2025.
Absolutely. And we just heard a little bit in Melina's report there, but talk to us a little bit more about this. Mike, what are the biggest sticking points to getting a budget passed right now?
Well, the biggest sticking points, and Thomas Massie has talked about this, it's the cuts and the impacts to constituents that are going to feel it. And specifically, you're looking at Medicaid. Obviously, the Senate one is increasing for border security. So there's going to be some representatives that are going to figure out, well, how does this really impact? Because I'm not on a border state. So how does this affect my constituents? But the biggest pushback that you're hearing right now, specifically from House members, and I've spoken to Thomas Massie specifically on this front, and it's really about the cuts to programs that are going to impact his constituents. Because as we've seen already on social media and across different outlets, you're having these Republican congressmen going back and having town halls and talking about the different ways and measures that Donald Trump's agenda is going to affect them. And they're hearing it. So they're hearing it. And now it's reflected outward as Representative Tim Burchett, and as you saw Thomas Massie now saying, look, I can't vote for some of these things because these are going to impact some of my constituents. I think the biggest one, Fiona, that everyone has pointed to is the impact on what this would impact for Medicaid. But it's really about, like I said, it's a two-part process here, because I think people don't understand there's a budget process, but then there's also the government potentially coming to a shutdown, which by March 14th, if we don't pass another continuing resolution, which keeps the government funded for another 45 to 90 days, we could have the government shut down and employees be furloughed and stuff like that. And that'll affect people in a different regard.
Absolutely. So I've got two questions here. What exactly happens if the blueprint passes, whether tonight or later on, if it does get delayed? And what happens if it doesn't?
So let's go with what happens if it doesn't. Well, this is why I think the vote will not happen tonight, because I think what they're trying to do is truly get all House Republicans in line by either making concessions to them as the year goes on, right? So if you take in those concessions, you get to the full 218. I had Representative Dan Goldman on my program this week, a Democrat in New York's 10th district, and he said, look, House Democrats are not going to play ball. So you're going to get 215 no's. That means you can't deviate from one. So let's go. That's part number one. But if it comes to a vote tonight, then obviously it moves to the Senate, and we'll see if the Senate now will get in line with this budget process, because both bills have to be aligned between the Senate and the House before the president obviously can take a look at both of them. So that's the way this process will work. And like I said, I don't think that they have, and given Melina's report there, I don't think they have enough yes votes. And I don't think Speaker Johnson is going to bring this to a vote tonight.
So, of course, you mentioned there the Senate has their own proposal. My question here is, how do you see either proposal, be it the House or the Senate, ultimately impacting Americans?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, because there's some stark differences between the two of them. And the biggest one is that the Senate one really wants to push Trump's tax cuts, which are set to expire at the end of the year, to later on in the year when they can tackle that. They really want to tackle border security, energy independence, and some other things that President Trump ran on, if you recall, during the campaign cycle and obviously post-election. The House bill is really about cuts. Melina's package there mentioned about the savings part of this in $2 trillion, but it would increase the national debt to about $4 trillion. So there's some impacts to some programs that a lot of these members of Congress are starting to hear from their constituents. But the key difference really between the two of them, from Lindsey Graham's overseeing the Senate Budget Committee and the House Budget Committee, is really about Trump's tax cuts and moving that later on in the fiscal year and tackling that issue later on. Both are kind of at an impasse with respect to this, but those are the key differences right now between the two of them.
Oh, Mike, we're also hearing that President Trump is set to meet some House Republicans today. Now, we're not sure yet who they are, but aides have said that mostly the president's going to meet with these newer rank and file members who are new to this whole extensive budget process. Is this some sort of a test?
I don't know if it's a test. I think it's more of an assurance, right? Look, we saw this during President Biden's administration. Whenever he feels like he can get a couple of votes over the line, they invite folks into the White House to talk to President Biden at the time. And I think President Trump is kind of doing the same thing here because, as that package mentioned before, and as everyone kind of knows, Tim Burchett was yesterday on the lead with Jake Tapper talking about how he was going to be a no vote potentially in this because of some of the different things of leaving that meeting yesterday that he felt just didn't get met. And I think President Trump is, at least seen in Republican eyes as this closer and can move the needle in one direction or the other. I don't know if it's a test, but it's more of a, let me explain to you and alleviate some of your fears as to why we need to get this enacted, because this is what I ran on. This is what I campaign on. I don't want to torpedo my first 100 days by having some people that are outliers in the party not voting together to get this 218 number.
Mike, before we go here, I just want to ask, how much leverage do the Democrats have in this whole process right now?
They actually have a lot, believe it or not. I mean, again, because if you can't find a yes vote between the Thomas Masseys and Tim Burchetts and Victoria Spartzas from Indiana that potentially will vote no on some of these bills, there are some moderate Democrats. Remember, there's a problem solvers caucus. I can't believe they titled it that, Fiona, because they're not solving any problems so far. But there's a problem solvers caucus that's made up of about 66 members that is a bipartisan group. There's a lot of moderate Democrats, let's call it. And I would say more conservative Democrats, moderate Republicans. And you could potentially get one or two to vote for that. Look, John Fetterman in these confirmation hearings sided with Senate Republicans when he was voting. So there is the chance to always have one or two. I've had a few on my show between Congressman Seth Moulton and Representative Glenn Ivey. These are some folks that I think could be the target of Republicans. But I think right now, speaking to a bunch of House Democrats as I have, they're unified in being 215 and saying, no, you figure it out. You are the majority party in both chambers. You need to figure it out.
Some very interesting dynamics in Congress right now. Mike Leon, always great talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona.
Coming up, more than 20 civil service employees resign from the Department of Government Efficiency. New York Governor Kathy Hochul offers them an opportunity for those fired by the federal government. We'll be right back.
Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Divinely inspired traditional oil painting inspires compassion. Artwork created in truth and beauty illuminates a path to goodness. Rediscover traditional art, revive classical culture. We warmly invite oil painters from around the world to participate in the 7th NTD International Figure Painting Competition, a celebration of classical realism. Please visit oilpainting.ntdtv.com.
There's a whirlwind of emotion and activity going on in this painting. And there's chaos all around and threat from below. The walls surrounding her, and they're anything but unmoved. They're moving all the time, and we sense that. But this little girl remains unmoved.
She's in quite a perilous situation, but she's completely strong and serene, and she's actually meditating. It was very, very well liked because no matter what culture or what sort of walk of life you're from, I think people, they see it and they immediately understand what that energy, what that message is, and they're drawn to it because everybody kind of needs a little bit of that in their own life, of, you know, the steadfast calmness and something to hold on to. It's definitely an inner peace in the midst of something very chaotic, and for a lot of people right now, the whole world is very, very chaotic. So I guess that's another reason why so many people are very drawn to this.
Everybody in my house knows how to ride a bike except me. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike and you didn't? I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Thanks for staying with us. The co-chairs of the DOGE caucus are now holding a news conference. Let's tune into that.
And not to mention, just being the shining city on the hill as America always has been. America is the go-to place for freedom. We look to be the shining example of freedom in the world. All that is in danger because we are overspending and we are spending ourselves into oblivion. So when the American people said, make a change, let's join with Donald Trump, who said, by the way, I'm bringing Elon with me, and we will make change to government. Well, guess what? Congress wasn't going to sit by and let them do all the work. Congress, because we know the president signs executive orders, but they're not permanent. And so a group of legislators decided, let's get together. Let's create a caucus, the DOGE caucus. Let's make it both Republicans and Democrats that can come together, maybe not agree on everything, but agree that we're spending too much, that it's an unaffordable track that we're on. Let's make some changes to come together. So today, how about that? We got a little taste of DOGE Day, where we've got a handful of our members that are going to be dropping bills, a DOGE bill, either today or this week, and you're going to hear about it first. So I am grateful to come out. We got some heavy hitters standing behind me. And before I get to them, before I go to the great state of New York next, I want to tell you about 3 bean bills that have a DOGE flavor to them that you need to know about. One is the CUTS Act. The CUTS Act is back. And what the CUTS Act stands for is cutting unobligated tumultuous spending. Is this from last year? Yes, it is, where we had over 92 co-sponsors, which we went out, our team went out and found, are you ready for this? COVID money that agencies and states are still hoarding. Are you kidding me? COVID is over. But these agencies still hoard this money. That money, and we think it's over $80 billion that's still out there. We want to take that money and either use it for current expenses or just to pay down the debt. Number 2, I'm proud to introduce and co-sponsor. People are excited about DOGE. Happy DOGE Day to you too, my friend. Let me tell you, I'm excited to sponsor, along with my good friend Joni Ernst, Drain the Swamp Act. Drain the Swamp Act says this: each agency needs to relocate 30% of the workforce outside of the district. Let's put them in the heartland. That's where people are in need of services, so let's relocate that. And then today, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time before the press, we've launched the Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is Act. I'm excited to announce that I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. The American people are making reductions right now at their dinner table. They're talking about, honey, what can we cut back on, what we can do, how are we going to afford Biden's eggs? We're going to make some reductions. The Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is says to every congressional office, let's reduce the amount that we're spending in your office by $100,000 over the course of a year. Let's just trim and tighten our belt a little bit. And that's the money that can be used to pay for expenses rather than put anything else on our credit card. That's what we don't want. We got a CR coming due in 2 to 3 weeks. And the last thing, anybody wants to see, including the American taxpayer. We don't want to see just Congress punting and just putting it on our credit card. We want real reductions. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go to we got some really big hitters up here from Congress that's going to talk about their DOGE twist and their involvement with DOGE. And so first, let's go to the great state of New York, where Representative Malliotakis is up next. Representative.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here with all of you. I want to thank you for coming out to cover this effort because, as you can see, we have Republicans that are across the political spectrum here. And it's important because we all understand the crisis that our nation's facing. We have a $37 trillion debt. We have to find ways to reduce wasteful spending and cut fraud, waste, and abuse, and our unnecessary overhead, and cut the bloated bureaucracy of our government, make it more efficient. And one of the things that we've done as a conference is say, look, come up with your ideas. Tell us where you would cut, where you think there's savings. And obviously there's a lot of different areas we can talk about, but one that's particularly near and dear to my heart is the issue of inhumane, unnecessary, cruel animal testing that's taking place in this country and abroad. And I don't know if people are aware, and I think the American people are unaware, that our government spends upwards of $20 billion annually to conduct inhumane and unnecessary experiments on cats, dogs, monkeys, bunnies, all sorts of animals. And that we've anywhere from hundreds of thousands to perhaps even over 1 million animals that are in captivity for these purposes. And the bottom line here is it's unnecessary with the way science has evolved and the technology that we have today. But Washington bureaucrats, they love throwing money at outdated, inefficient systems, and animal testing is one of the worst offenders. Millions of tax dollars were not just spent here in the United States, but they were spent on horrific experiments in communist China and in Russia. The FDA acknowledges that at least 90% of drugs tested on animals fail in humans, and that some studies estimate the number is even higher, up to 95%. So what my legislation would do, which I have not introduced yet, so this is an exclusive for you guys, it's called the SPARE Act, Safeguard Pets, Animals, and Research Ethics Act. What my legislation would do would ban federal funding of unnecessary, costly, and cruel testing on animals here in the United States and in foreign countries. The SPARE Act phases out wasteful animal testing and replaces it with modern, more effective research methods. AI-driven models predict drug reactions more accurately than lab rats. Organ-on-chip technology stimulates real human biology. There's no need for these painful, costly animal tests. And human cell-based models provide better medical insights than flawed animal data. And so it also has a transparency, accountability, and enforcement measures to them as well, including annual audits and tough penalties and funding cuts for violators. So this bill, I hope, is something that Republicans and Democrats, people who love animals, people who love science, would support, because it is based on science, it is based on innovation, it is based on being humane, and also protects the taxpayer pockets. So thank you very much for letting me talk about my bill, and I will pass it on to you.
Back to Bean. Nicole, sign me up. Sign me up. It is disgusting what, I'll call him out by name, Dr. Fauci did to beagles. It's beyond words. Let's end it. Let's end that. Next up, how about that? We're going to the great state of Virginia, which will give you a hint of where we're going. But I want to brag on him because his work with the Republican Study Committee, he was very involved in the last couple of years to come up with a budget that puts us on a path to being balanced over 10 years. And that is, it's genius economically, knowing that we not only have to make reductions in spending, but we also have to grow our economy. Those two together can put us back on the prosperity train. So with that, to the great state of Virginia we go, where Representative Ben Cline is up next. Go get him, Big Ben.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You got it, my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing as chair of the DOGE caucus, working alongside colleagues from, as was said, across the ideological spectrum to make sure that we save taxpayers money, that we make government work for the people and not the other way around. And to that end, we're working to make sure that your tax dollars are spent wisely. For too long, Washington has treated taxpayer dollars like monopoly money, spending without accountability, racking up over $35 trillion in debt, fueling waste, fraud, and abuse at the expense of hardworking Americans. It's time to restore sanity to our budget and put a stop to reckless government handouts and get our nation's spending back on track. So we need to start by recognizing every single dollar spent by the federal government is a dollar taken from the American people. This isn't Washington's money, it's not the bureaucracy's money, it's your money, the taxpayers' money. It should be spent wisely. So that's why I've reintroduced the No Welfare for the Wealthy Act. It's a common sense bill that will close a loophole that allows millionaires to qualify for food stamps. It makes no sense that because of broad-based categorical eligibility, better known as BBCE, states are ignoring federal income and asset limits when they hand out benefits. So they're handing out benefits to individuals who own vacation homes, boats, RVs, all on the taxpayer's dime. This is exactly the kind of waste that DOGE was created to target, and exactly what this caucus is all about fighting. You know, this is not about denying help to those who need it. It's about stopping the abuse of hard-earned taxpayer dollars and restoring integrity to a system that has been failing the American people for far too long. Under BBCE, more than 5 million able-bodied individuals who shouldn't qualify for food stamps are receiving them, and yes, including millionaires. Meanwhile, American families who actually need help are left struggling under a system that prioritizes bureaucratic expansion over accountability. The No Welfare for the Wealthy Act puts an end to this nonsense by ensuring states can no longer bypass federal limits and abuse this broken system. And let's talk about the price tag. Taxpayers are footing a nearly $100 billion bill every year to fund food stamps. Fixing this loophole will save more than $11 billion annually. That's real money and should be going to those who actually need assistance, not those who are gaming the system. We have a president in the White House who's willing to stand up to waste, fraud, and abuse in government and demand accountability. And with President Trump's leadership, DOGE and a Republican majority in Congress, I'm optimistic, will restore fiscal responsibility, government accountability, and protect taxpayer dollars. So I call on Congress, let's do our job. Let's put an end to this waste and restore integrity to government programs and ensure that every tax dollar is spent with the same care and responsibility that American families use when managing their own budgets. The American people deserve no less. I want to thank the chairman and yield back.
Well done, Ben. No, that's it. Sign me up for that, too. See, I told you DOGE brings people together. Who could be against millionaires getting food stamps? And when a millionaire takes a food stamp, it takes it away from somebody that really needs help, and that's what we want to focus on. I want to bring greetings on behalf of the two other co-chairs of the DOGE caucus. One is Representative Blake Moore from Utah, and also Representative Pete Sessions from Texas. They may show up. I know our schedule is always in flux, so if they show up, we'll give them a big DOGE welcome, but if not, the show will go on. Let me tell you, the Triangle, it's a big deal to have you here. The next gentleman from South Carolina, who I'm giving a heads up to, is no stranger to the Triangle. He lives out here almost because he is constantly calling out government waste, fraud, and abuse, and there's always a better way to do it. So no stranger, and he's got ideas of where we need to go in. Would you please welcome from the great state of South Carolina, Mr. Ralph Norman. Go get him, Ralph.
Thank you, Aaron. I want to thank you for forming the DOGE caucus with Sessions and others. You know, this is a special day, and I want to thank all of my comrades who are up here. They truly want to make a difference for the American people. And never before have we seen what is happening in this country. To have a man like Elon Musk, who has got the brain power, along with President Trump, to find out where our tax dollars are going. That's what he's finding out. He's tracking them. Never before have we known that. Now, in your family business, in your family itself, you want to know where the money goes and exactly where it's going. Elon Musk is able to do that. And, you know, he's getting a lot of criticism now because he's a billionaire. And I asked one of my Democrat colleagues last night on Rules, I said, how did he make his money? Was it on a government paycheck? No. Was it producing a product? Yes. Was it taking risk? Yes. Was it sleeping on the floor of his factories? Yes. He risked it all. He's an example of the American spirit, entrepreneurship, capitalism. That's what made this country great, not government. And the fact that he issued a tweet for any federal employee to name 5 things to justify their job. I had a reporter yesterday that came up to me. He may have done it to y'all, and said, "Congressman, I've got a question for you." I said, "Sure. What 5 things did you do last week?" I said, "That is a great question." I met with constituents, made talks to 2 groups. Went to my office to answer phone calls. I said, "You want 20? I can name that. You ought to ask me that. What did we do?" Now, anybody that objects to that, anybody that objects to a man who is taking zero, he's taken zero to find out what's going on in this country. He's not for cutting anything. What he's for is finding the waste, fraud, and abuse. They're good things in a lot of programs, but as the first program that he looked at, USAID, what's the amount of fraudulent claims that he found? $154 billion worth. He did that. And folks, he's going to go down through the list. They can criticize and shout all they want about him, but the man is doing, it's providential what he's doing for this country. That's never happened. People ask us, "Well, Norman, why hadn't you done it?" You couldn't get into the books. They had it, they had it so you couldn't find out where our money went. The big disconnect we have with our Democrat friends, it's not their money. It's our money. It's the people's money. And that's what's so exciting about what's happening today. I'm grateful for the work that Aaron Beam and other members have done. Far too long, government has operated inefficiently, leading to poor lawmaking and with heavy costs to the American taxpayer. Now, I'm getting ready to tell you about 2 bills. And again, none of this would really have the effect unless we could track it and verify. As Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. That's what Elon Musk is doing, and that's what my 2 bills will do along with these others. One is our HR 1388, the Fair Value Accounting and Budget Act. Between student loans and home ownership, the federal government provides a lot of kind of different loans and guarantees. It's providing the mechanism to look into that to see exactly where it goes and what it does. The Cost Act is the second bill, 1387. It promotes transparency by providing projects using federal funds to clearly and publicly disclose where the money ends up. And it's just like the fair value and accounting. It's where the money goes. So it's 2 bills, 2 different bills, but it's being enabled by what the Trump administration is doing with Elon Musk. I just want to thank everybody that's taken a role in this. Folks, they're fighting my friends on the left are fighting to prevent this from happening. It's not going to happen. We just have begun to fight. We're going to win this fight for the American people. And if there's one way we can balance a budget, is get the fraud and abuse out of all the agencies. And guess who's going to be the judge? We the people. Each one of you are going to be able to look at it and say, this makes sense, this does not. So I'm happy to work with my colleagues, and Aaron, I yield back.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm going to say goodbye to Nicole. She's going to slip out, and Nicole, thank you so much for doing that. If you want to get things done, ask a small town mayor. How about that? Let me put this right here. Here we go. Right there. Boom. Hey, you can tell a lot of people are excited about DOGE caucus. You want to get things done, ask a small town mayor. Our next speaker was mayor of her town, but also I'm more impressed with her having one of the largest job fairs in the Lone Star State. That's right, she puts people to work in the state of Texas. Somebody may get a free trip downtown. How about that? Maybe several of them. So,
Go ahead.
you know. So here we go. I told you, small town. She's a dynamo. She currently chairs the budget committee of the Republican Study Committee and is doing an awesome job. My friend from the great state of Texas, please welcome Representative Beth Van Duyne. Hooray.
Thank you. Small town. I was city council for 6 years, and I was mayor of for 6 years for a city called Irving, Texas, and happens to be 92nd largest city in the country, 250,000 people. But it did feel like a small town because you get to know the people, you get to know the businesses, you get to know the small business owners, you get to know the teachers. It's a phenomenal experience before you come to council, but it also teaches you the importance of staying within a budget. I think I'm one of only a handful of people in Congress who've actually passed 12 balanced budgets. And it wasn't because we didn't have people who wanted to spend more money. It wasn't because I didn't have staff who could tell me more projects that we had to spend on. It was actually the law. I think we shouldn't do that here. We've got to find ways of being able to get our government spending under control. And I want to say, citing his success in working to cut hundreds of thousands of jobs from the federal government, then President Bill Clinton famously stated, "We have worked to give the American people a smaller, less bureaucratic government in Washington. And we have to give the American people one that lives within its means." The era of big government is over. Man, how many years have gone by between that statement and where we are now, and what we've seen is more government and more bloat. Just a few years later, another Democrat president noted, "We cannot sustain a system that bleeds billions of taxpayer dollars on programs that have outlived their usefulness or exist solely because of the power of a politician, lobbyist, or interest group. We simply cannot afford it." And I agree with then President Obama that to protect the American taxpayer, our ability to grow as a nation, and for our families to be able to provide and afford the lives that they want to live, free from government intrusion, that we must once again rid ourselves of unnecessary special interests and bloated programs that no longer serve our nation. And the American people overwhelmingly agree. Just yesterday, polling numbers were released showing over 70% of Americans agree with the work of the Department of Government Efficiency, and by extension the DOGE caucus, to make significant cuts in the size, scope, and power of the federal government. Every day, new programs of insane spending are being exposed. The waste, corruption, and outright money laundering that has occurred is so grotesque and very likely criminal in some instances that it is our moral obligation to wipe these programs from the books. We talk about a golden age because we are living in a moment where the resolve of the executive branch matches the will of the American people in such a way of massive reform can and must be brought about to save the future of generations to come. This is our moment to achieve cathartic reforms, but we need to also put in place controls so that when this moment passes, that there are protections to prevent this kind of debt and calamity from ever occurring again. And that's why I have reintroduced the Government Offices Realignment and Closure Act, GORAC, to establish a process to cut wasteful spending, slash the bureaucracy, and ensure our national debt never again reaches heights to threaten the stability of our country. This bill will require a third-party audit to expose redundant and inefficient, wasteful, or outdated functions within federal executive agencies. Every 10 years, the auditor's findings will be reported to Congress, and as outlined in the bill, recommendations will be considered under fast-tracking procedures on the floor, thereby establishing a process for Congress to directly confront government bloat, corruption, and cowardice. Similarly, I've also introduced the Reducing Expensive Departments and Unnecessary Civil Employees Act, REDUCE for short, that codifies President Trump's executive action to shrink the bloated bureaucracy. The REDUCE Act will force agencies to eliminate duplicative positions and reform hiring practices to rein in the administrative state. With exceptions for immigration, law enforcement, and public safety, the REDUCE Act requires agencies to remove duplicative positions and hire no more than one employee for every 4 employees who depart the federal workforce. These programs and other efforts that have been mentioned here today are outright necessities to ensure the federal government stops stealing the vitality, the innovation, and the economic strength of our nation. Just like then, Presidents Clinton and Obama recognized that the federal government has become too large and too bloated for our nation to bear. We have this incredible moment to make significant and long-lasting changes. The American people are with us on this. They have entrusted us with this critical task, and it is our responsibility to deliver in the most important endeavor. And if not now, then when? And thank you very much, Aaron.
Beth Van Dyne, I told you she was good.
And we're seeing there a live look of the co-chairs of the DOGE caucus, a bipartisan caucus, if I may, holding their press conference announcing some new bills and proposals. All right, moving on now. More than 20 civil service employees resigning today from the Department of Government Efficiency. They cited the dismantling of what they called critical public services as their reason for stepping down. The mass resignation of engineers, data scientists, and product managers is a temporary setback for Trump and Musk's tech-driven pruning of the federal workforce. The departures come amid a flurry of court challenges that have sought to stop, or roll back their efforts to reduce the size of government. The staffers who resigned today worked for the United States Digital Service. The office was established during President Barack Obama's administration after the disastrous rollout of health insurance web portal healthcare.gov. Meanwhile, federal workers who get the axe or resign could find new opportunities in the Empire State. New York Governor Kathy Hochul encouraged recently laid-off government employees to apply for state jobs. Hochul said in a videotaped statement, quote, "The federal government might say you're fired, but here in New York, we say you're hired." According to the State Jobs New York website, thousands of positions are open. Hochul and President Trump met for more than an hour on Friday afternoon in the Oval Office. Hochul's press secretary, Avi Smalls, said discussions focused on the city's congestion pricing, immigration, infrastructure, economic development, energy, offshore wind, and nuclear power. Coming up next, President Trump seeks compensation for the aid the U.S. is sending Ukraine. He now says a rare earth mineral deal might be signed as soon as this week. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Whispered across generations, a hidden secret unveils the essence of longevity and vitality, a timeless legend regarding energy and wonder. Rooted in ancient health wisdom, we proudly introduce Pure Tang Black Ginseng, a 100% natural organic energy drink made from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng. It takes 2,260 days and nights from seed to growth, undergoing a meticulous 9-step process of steaming and drying. Black ginseng reaches its full potency, enriched with ginsenoside RG3 and enhanced absorption efficiency. No sugar, no caffeine, no artificial ingredients. Experience the pure natural power of Pure Tang Black Ginseng. Nourish your body, strengthen your immunity, and boost your energy. To order Pure Tang Black Ginseng, please visit puretang.com.
Kids love it. Parents trust it. Obviously. Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjiong Campus courses led by expert educators. This is spectacular. Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more. Wow. All while having fun. Perfect. Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-701-6159. That's 1-800-701-6159.
Welcome back to Newsroom. President Donald Trump says that he is close to sealing a rare earth mineral deal with Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky might be traveling to Washington soon. That's as the UN Security Council officially takes a neutral stance on the war, a move that Russia welcomes. Here's the latest on the conflict.
This resolution puts us on the path to peace.
The UN Security Council late on Monday adopting a U.S.-drafted resolution on the war in Ukraine. The resolution takes a neutral position on the conflict.
It is a first step, but a crucial one of which we should all be proud.
Until now, the 15-member council has been unable to take any action on the conflict in Ukraine because Russia is a veto power. Monday's resolution received 10 votes in favor, while 5 European countries abstained. The UK was one of them.
There can be no equivalence between Russia and Ukraine in how this council refers to this war.
The Kremlin welcomes the resolution, saying the U.S. is taking a more balanced stance on the conflict. Russia's foreign minister says the resolution shows the causes of the war are being better understood. The document mourns the loss of life. It also reiterates that the UN's purpose is to maintain international peace and security and peacefully settle disputes. Meanwhile, President Trump continues working on securing compensation for the aid the U.S. is sending to Ukraine. Progress is being made with President Volodymyr Zelensky on a deal to use Ukraine's rare earth minerals as compensation. Trump says the deal is close, adding that Zelensky might travel to Washington this week or next.
Britain pledges to increase defense spending as Prime Minister Starmer prepares to meet with President Trump. British overseas aid funding will be cut in order to achieve this. Starmer is seeking Trump's commitment to help peacekeeping forces in a post-war Ukraine. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more from London.
Britain will raise its defense spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2027. It's a signal to President Trump that the UK can help boost Europe's security. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said this will begin the biggest sustained increase in defense spending since the end of the Cold War.
But, Mr. Speaker, we must go further still. So, subject to economic and fiscal conditions and aligned with our strategic and operational needs, we will also set a clear ambition for defence spending to rise to 3% of GDP in the next Parliament.
Britain last spent 3% of GDP on defence in 1993 to 94. Starmer said the government will spend $17 billion more on defence every year from 2027. Britain's Defence Ministry said it spent £54 billion, or about $68 billion, in the 2023 to 24 financial year. Successive British governments have reduced spending on defence since World War II and the Cold War, instead stepping up investment in health, welfare and education. The new defence increase will be paid for by cutting the international aid budget from 0.5% down to 0.3% in 2027.
I want to be clear to the House. That is not an announcement I am happy to make. I'm proud of our pioneering record on overseas development.
While unhappy about the aid cut, he said it was necessary to offer Ukraine and Europe support in the, quote, new era. European leaders were stunned earlier this month when Trump's administration made clear that Europe would need to step up to provide its own security. It sparked a bout of diplomatic activity. Trump has repeatedly called for NATO nations to spend 5% of GDP on defense. Starmer is due to meet Trump in Washington on Thursday.
When I meet President Trump, I will be clear. I want this relationship to go from strength to strength. But, Mr. Speaker, strength in this world also depends on a new alliance with Europe.
Starmer said he is open to putting British troops in Ukraine to help guarantee security, but only alongside other European nations. He also wants the US to act as a backstop for any European security guarantee to deter Russia from launching a new invasion. So far, Trump and French President Emmanuel Macron have agreed on the deployment of European peacekeeping forces, but Trump has not committed the US to playing a role. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
In a sweeping cut to government funding by the Trump administration, here comes one exception. Secretary of State Marco Rubio lifted the freeze on more than $1 billion in U.S. defense aid for two strategic allies in the Indo-Pacific. That's Taiwan and the Philippines. This decision is a strong signal to Beijing, the administration's tough stance against the Chinese military aggression in the region. The exemption covers $870 million for Taiwan and $336 million for the Philippines. The decision follows Beijing's continuous aggression in the region. Last week, Beijing sent a Navy helicopter to tail a Filipino civilian airplane in the South China Sea, coming within less than 10 feet of an air collision. Beijing also continues to send warships and warplanes to harass Taiwan, which is a self-governed democracy. Now, as for the exemption, 3 days after being sworn in as the new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio issued a sweeping order to pause almost all U.S. foreign aid for 90 days, citing the need for a thorough review of all programs. Staying in Asia, more tension in the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan's Coast Guard say they have detained a China-linked cargo ship after an undersea cable was disconnected. A statement from Taiwan's Coast Guard says the ship did not respond to repeated communication attempts. Soon after the ship dropped anchor, a Taiwan telecom company detected the internet cable was cut. The ship is registered in the African nation of Togo, but with Chinese funding and a Chinese crew. Taiwan's Coast Guard says the ship had lingered in waters near the cable since Saturday. A similar incident occurred in January. Taiwanese authorities say this could be a gray zone tactic by Beijing. That's a reference to provocative actions below what can be counted as acts of war. Taiwan's Coast Guard took the vessel and its crew to Taiwan and is now investigating the matter. Changing tracks now, Denny's is adding an egg surcharge for some of its locations, this amid shortages and higher egg prices. The diner chain declined to specify the exact amount of the surcharge. Denny's said in a statement, pricing decisions are being made restaurant by restaurant. Denny's isn't the only restaurant attempting to cope with the egg supply shortage. Waffle House recently added a 50-cent price hike for meals that include eggs. Major retailers, including Costco and Trader Joe's, have had to take action as well, imposing limits on how many eggs one customer can buy. Up next, the Supreme Court throws out a murder conviction for an Oklahoma man who has maintained his innocence for 27 years. His wife called the decision an answered prayer. That and more after the break.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
Hi friends, Richard Karn here. Now I'm known as the guy who can fix just about anything, but the technology in most appliances requires very special training to fix. My point is, even I know when I've met my match, and that's why my family has Choice Home Warranty. So we won't get stuck with high-priced repairs.
Choice Home Warranty covers over 25 major home systems and appliances. That's your AC, heating, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and so much more.
Imagine for less than a cup of coffee a day, Choice Home Warranty can help protect you from expensive major system and appliance breakdowns that your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover. but you have to call now before it's too late.
Every homeowner should have Choice Home Warranty. Your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover your appliances.
Washing machine, dryer, refrigerator, air condition. If I had any issues arise, they were able to take care of it immediately.
Now, homeowners insurance won't protect you when your home's major systems and appliances break down due to normal wear and tear. But Choice Home Warranty will. They can help cover repairs and replacements.
Choice Home Warranty is the best warranty we've ever used. It would save you so much money in the long run.
Hey, I'm not the only one raving about Choice Home Warranty. They were named a Best Home Warranty Company and Best Claim Service by U.S. News 360 Reviews.
Call Choice Home Warranty now and get access to a nationwide network of over 15,000 technicians and the latest appointment setting technology so you'll know when they're on their way.
If I have an issue with an appliance or something around the house, I just call up Choice Home Warranty and I don't have to worry about that.
So, do what this old DIYer did and call Choice Home Warranty now before something breaks down. Tell them I sent you and get your first month free.
Call Choice Home Warranty before it's too late and get protection for your heating, AC, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and more. Call for your free quote today. Call in the next 5 minutes and get your first month free. 800-360-6782. 800-360-6782.
When it comes to disasters and emergencies, it's not a matter of if, but when.
I'm relying on luck, but who knows if it'll be on my side.
Let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Take control at ready.gov/olderadults.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Fiona G. House Republican leaders scramble with last-minute meetings to whip up the votes to pass their budget resolution. And President Donald Trump wants the Keystone XL Pipeline built now. The project was scrapped under the Biden administration, but now Trump says the government will help streamline its completion. Co-chairs of the Congressional DOGE caucus propose new legislation in an effort to reduce the size of government. Can they help rein in federal spending and debt? The Supreme Court throws out a murder conviction for an Oklahoma man who has maintained his innocence for 27 years. His wife calls the decision an answered prayer. Egg prices are surging, and that means some breakfast favorites are getting more expensive. Denny's has announced a temporary surcharge on meals that include eggs, citing the ongoing nationwide shortage. And the State Department unfreezes $1 billion worth of defense aid to Taiwan and the Philippines, along with new strategic policies for the Indo-Pacific. This all in the face of communist China.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt just introduced a new policy for more media to attend media briefings. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao brings us more.
So today, a big announcement from the press secretary in that press briefing just ended now at the White House. She announced that going forward, the White House press office will now determine who gets into what we call the pool, which is a selected group of reporters assigned to the president on a daily basis, on a rotation basis. But those are the ones who go into Oval Office remarks, his exclusive press conferences that other journalists at the White House do not get that access to. Meanwhile, today, the White House says that going forward, the White House press office will select those who go into those events instead of the White House Correspondents Association, which has been for years determining who gets into the pool and, of course, the daily rotation of the pool. And the purpose of that, the press secretary says, is to make sure that a select group of D.C.-based journalists should no longer enjoy what she calls a monopoly of the privilege of press access at the White House, adding that all journalists, outlets, and voices deserve a seat at this highly coveted table. Of course, this follows decision by the White House starting on day one of this administration that they're going to allow a new media seats to the White House briefing room, allowing in more journalists of different formats, for example, podcasters, as well as other journalists with a huge online following, giving them also a seat at the briefing room to ask questions. Of course, those who already have been here, including the ones who are in the association who have assigned seats, they still will get their same access. It's just that now the pool will be determined by the press office instead. Meanwhile, today during the briefing, the White House press secretary also said this. Watch.
A select group of DC-based journalists should no longer have a monopoly over the privilege of press access at the White House. All journalists, outlets, and voices deserve a seat at this highly coveted table.
Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt also defended the DOGE decision to send out emails through, of course, the Office of Personnel Management to all federal employees, asking them to submit 5 bullet points of what they got done last week. The press secretary said that it's a very simple idea and that a taxpayer in the U.S. deserves that answer from these workers. She adds that President Trump, as well as Elon Musk and DOGE, are working as one unified team, of course, including the entire cabinet. Here's what she said. Watch.
All the Office of Personnel Management is asking, all this administration is asking, President Trump is asking, is for federal workers who live off of the American taxpayer's dime to send 5 bullet points of what they have done in the previous week. That is all we are asking for. We advise federal workers, unless your agency has dictated you not to respond to this email.
And the press secretary confirmed to us at the briefing that Elon Musk will be there at President Trump's first official cabinet meeting tomorrow. She says Elon Musk will be there to talk with the different secretaries of different departments to identify what they call waste, fraud, and abuse. Back to you.
House Republicans are soon expected to vote on a budget resolution that unlocks President Trump's priorities on taxes, energy, border policies, and more. Moments ago, Democrats railed against the measure, warning about impacts on Americans, while House leadership works to dispel what they say are lies. NTD's Melina Weiskup reports.
This afternoon, the Congressional Progressive Caucus led a large number of advocates railing against the potential downfalls of Republicans' budget plans. Democrats say that they're going to include tax changes that will benefit billionaires, paying for it through cuts to social safety programs like Medicaid. Republicans, meanwhile, say that's simply not true, and quite to the contrary, they say if they don't pass this budget, that Americans will be on the hook for the largest tax increase in history.
What House Republicans are trying to pass today is to steal from seniors, steal from children, steal from veterans, all to pay for tax cuts for the ultra-rich. That's what it is. They want to end Medicaid as we know it, just to pay for tax breaks for guys like Elon Musk.
The word Medicaid is not even in this bill. And it's a permanent rate at 21%. So we're not talking about the big multinational corporations. They're lying.
Now, even though Republicans' budget resolution does not include those specific policy changes, it's just setting the stage. It's a blueprint for that budget bill to come. It does guarantee $2 trillion worth of savings over 10 years. And some are concerned about where those savings will come from.
So that my seniors are going to be protected, that the developmentally disabled and other people with disabilities would be protected, and that my hospitals wouldn't see cuts that would affect the service that they provide in the community. So that's always been my concern, and as I get assurances and clarity, I'm moving more toward the yes in the process, but I'm not there yet.
And even as this vote is teed up for tonight at 6 p.m. as of this afternoon, there are still a large number of Republicans who are undecided on which way they'll vote. Congressman Thomas Massie came out of a closed-door meeting with Republicans this morning saying that meeting solidified his no vote. And with Republicans' slim majority, that means if Thomas Massie votes no and just one other Republican opposes it, this bill will tank. Because of that, now House Speaker Mike Johnson is wavering on whether or not they'll still hold that vote.
We are going to do this methodically. We're going to do it in a very responsible manner, and we're going to achieve these goals. And we'll be working with all the members throughout the day to get to that. There may be a vote tonight. There may not be. Stay tuned.
The vote is planned for 6 p.m. tonight, and we'll be watching to see whether or not it happens. If it doesn't, Speaker Johnson says he's committed to holding it sometime this week. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
President Trump says he wants the Keystone XL Pipeline built as soon as possible. The Biden administration scrapped the project as part of a commitment to renewable energy. The pipeline was designed to transport crude oil from Canada to the United States. Now, Trump says his administration is very different than the previous one, adding that he would promise easy approvals and an almost immediate start to the project. When it was canceled, officials in Canada said they were disappointed by the decision. The pipeline transports oil from Canada, so restarting it could be a boost for Ottawa. That's as Trump seeks to put tariffs on all Canadian imports, including oil and gas. Trump suggested that even if the company that was originally supposed to build the pipeline won't do it, someone else should step in and make it happen. Joining us now to discuss this is David Blackman, energy policy analyst and a 40-year veteran of the oil and gas industry. David, thank you for joining us. I want to ask you here, what is the benefit? What is the benefit of this pipeline for the American people?
Well, it would have tremendous benefit just in terms of safety and environmental benefits, bringing 830,000 barrels of oil every day down from Canada to the United States for refining and distribution to market centers. Pipelines are far and away the safest and most environmentally responsible way to move oil, around the country. And at this point, this oil is still coming into the United States. It's just coming in on trains and trucks, which are far more high risk and far more polluting. And so that alone would be a tremendous benefit to the environment and to the economy of the United States and to Canada.
Well, so you mentioned it's a benefit to the environment, but are there any potential concerns for the environment?
Oh, sure. Every kind of energy transportation or energy project comes with inherent risks. There's always a risk of a leak in the pipeline. This pipeline, sadly, which was already halfway built when Joe Biden canceled it in 2021, was going to be the safest and most high-tech pipeline ever built in the United States. And it's really a shame it was canceled because it was would have provided such a great example for the rest of the industry on how these things can be done in a cost-effective way and still be profitable. There are those risks, though, and everybody's aware of them. And companies like TC Energy and now Southwell Energy, which owns the project, are very conscious of safety, and they work on sophisticated safety processes every day.
Well, given the difficulty that you just mentioned there of completing this project to date, will any company still be willing to step up to the plate this time?
It's a good question. I mean, this was an $8 billion project in 2020, okay? And post Joe Biden dollars, it's probably more like a $12 billion project. That's a big bit of capital that has to be raised. And, you would still have very difficult time getting permits back in place for all the rights of way you need. Sadly, again, the permits that were in place for this pipeline in 2021, most of them are no longer effective. And so you'd have years of trying to re-permit the project. I know President Trump promises to speed all of that up at the federal level, but you still have local and state permits that are required in all sorts of different jurisdictions over a 1,100-mile pipeline. So it's a very big lift for any company, even the biggest companies. And I just don't know if President Trump will be able to find someone who's willing to take the risk.
Right, David, and building off of what you just said there, Trump promised fast approvals, but we also saw lawsuits last time holding up the project. Can Trump really guarantee here a smooth process for any company that decides to take on the project?
Well, no president can guarantee there won't be lawsuits. Obviously, there would be. And as you mentioned, there were an array of lawsuits filed against the project last time. Even with that, it was able to get all of its permits in place until Secretary of State John Kerry decided not to issue the cross-border permit during the Obama administration. President Trump reversed that when he came into office very quickly. And as I say, prior to 2021, half of this pipeline was already in the ground. And it's a shame that more than $3 billion had already been invested by TC Energy. And any president who would have just canceled that with the stroke of a pen, it's really kind of a shame, really an unprecedented act.
David, I think you already touched on this earlier, but tell us a little more. How does this Keystone XL fit into Trump's broader energy plans?
Well, I think for President Trump, it's all about energy security and enhancing the country's energy security, which he knows is inexorably tied to national security. You can't have one without the other. And so having that safe and steady supply of oil coming in from Canada would be a big boost to the country's refiners here in the United States, and ease pressure on our domestic industry to produce more. His plan overall is for growth, and not just in the oil and gas industry, but in the solar industry as well, in hydrogen, in all forms of energy. When you listen to Energy Secretary Chris Wright talk about it, it's an all of the above approach. And so, this would just be emblematic of Trump's intention to restart the oil and gas industry on a stronger growth path than it's been on. And it would also, I think, be emblematic of his intention to make permitting of interstate and international pipeline projects easier to accomplish during his presidency as compared to the previous 4 years.
David, speaking of Canada, we're going to see those tariffs come into play next week. Now, Trump really wants this project completed. Do you see Canada using this as leverage in their tariff negotiations with the president?
I'm sure the Trudeau government would like to be able to do that. I'm not really sure that this project, given the status of it, and really no commitment on the part of South Bow to be willing to restart it, I'm not sure it's really going to be an effective tool of leverage for the Canadian government in those negotiations. But it'll be interesting to see, and it would be really interesting to see how President Trump would respond.
Interesting to see indeed. David Blackman, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Moving on now, co-chairs of the Congressional DOGE caucus held a press conference just moments ago discussing their latest priorities. Florida Representative Aaron Bean and his Republican colleagues proposed new legislation in an effort to reduce the size of government and rein in spending.
I'm excited to sponsor, along with my good friend Joni Ernst, Drain the Swamp Act. Drain the Swamp Act says this: each agency needs to relocate 30% of the workforce outside of the district. Let's put them in the heartland. That's where people are in need of services, so let's relocate that. And then today, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time before the press, we've launched the Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is Act. I'm excited to announce that I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. The American people are making reductions right now at their dinner table. They're talking about, honey, what can we cut back on, what we can do, how are we going to afford Biden's eggs? We're going to make some reductions. The Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is says to every congressional office, let's reduce the amount that we're spending in your office by $100,000 over the course of a year. Let's just trim and tighten our belt a little bit, and that's the money that can be used to pay for expenses rather than put anything else on our credit card. That's what we don't want. We got a CR coming due in, 2 to 3 weeks, and the last thing anybody wants to see, including the American taxpayer, we don't want to see just Congress punting and just putting it on our credit card. We want real reductions.
New York Representative Nicole Maliotakis proposed a bill to ban federal funding for inhumane animal testing. She said the legislation would eliminate $20 billion of annual government spending. South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman introduced two bills. The Fair Value Accounting and Budget Act would provide transparency into government loans, and the Cost Act would require greater disclosure from projects that use federal funds. In a sweeping cut to government funding by the Trump administration, here comes one exception. Secretary of State Marco Rubio lifted the freeze on more than $1 billion in U.S. defense aid for two strategic allies in the Indo-Pacific. Those are Taiwan and the Philippines. This decision is a strong signal to Beijing. The administration's tough stance against the Chinese military aggression in the region stands strong. The exemption covers $870 million for Taiwan and $336 million for the Philippines. The decision follows Beijing's continuous aggression in the region. Last week, Beijing sent a Navy helicopter to tail a Filipino civilian airplane in the South China Sea, coming within less than 10 feet of an air collision. Beijing also continues to send warships and warplanes to harass Taiwan, a self-governed democracy. As for the exemption, 3 days after being sworn in as the new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio issued a sweeping order to pause almost all U.S. foreign aid for 90 days, citing there the need for a thorough review of all programs. And more tension in the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan's Coast Guard say they have detained a China-linked cargo ship after an undersea cable was disconnected. A statement from Taiwan's Coast Guard says the ship did not respond to repeated communication attempts. Soon after the ship dropped anchor, a Taiwan telecom company detected the internet cable was cut. The ship is registered in the African nation of Togo, but with Chinese funding and a Chinese crew. Taiwan's Coast Guard says the ship had lingered in waters near the cable since Saturday. A similar incident occurred back in January. Taiwanese authorities say this could be a gray zone tactic by Beijing. That's a reference to provocative actions below what can be counted as acts of war. Taiwan's Coast Guard took the vessel and its crew to Taiwan and is now investigating the matter. When we come back, the Supreme Court throws out a murder conviction for an Oklahoma man who has maintained his innocence for 27 years. His wife calls the decision an answered prayer. And egg prices are surging. That means some breakfast favorites are getting more expensive. Denny's has announced a temporary surcharge on meals that include eggs, citing the ongoing nationwide shortage. That and more after the break.
What has lasted 5,000 years was once almost lost. Now, the world awaits the divine culture's return.
Focus on beauty, showcase nature, share kindness, feel brightness. 2025, the 5th NTD International Photography Competition. Capture the beautiful moments in your eyes. Your works will be showcased in galleries and on multiple online platforms, appreciated and collected. Please visit photo.ntdtv.com.
If you're watching this, I didn't make it. Thanks to people like you and the American Heart Association, my family never had to see this video. I was a healthy 47-year-old, no symptoms, but then my doctor discovered I had a bad heart valve that was beyond repair. The scariest day of my life was when I was sitting on a gurney as I looked and my wife was at my side and my kids had me surrounded. Deep down, you know, this could be it. This could be all there is.
Not having him around for Riley to grow up with and have that papa figure in his life, that would have been hard.
This little heart valve did something really big. It saved my life. I wouldn't be here today without it. The research for this heart valve was funded by the American Heart Association. And that's why I'm asking you to become a monthly donor for just $19 a month. When you do, you'll help fund the next medical breakthrough that could save your life or the life of someone you love. You'll also provide life-saving CPR training and help certify hospitals to give the best care to those who have had a heart attack or stroke. When you give $19 a month, we'll send you a t-shirt just like this one. From the moment you put it on, you'll help raise awareness for heart disease and stroke. Since my surgery, I had a son get married. I had a daughter graduate high school. I had another daughter give birth to a precious boy. I would have missed all that. And that's why it's personal for me.
We're very thankful for everyone who is a donor because it gives us more time.
Every 40 seconds, someone has a heart attack. The next person you help save could be someone you love or even you. Become a monthly donor today by calling or going to helpheart.org because it's personal.
Thanks for staying with us. The Supreme Court threw out the murder conviction and death penalty for an Oklahoma man who was found guilty in the killing of a motel owner. That was 27 years ago. His wife called the decision an answered prayer. Richard Glossip has steadfastly maintained his innocence in the 1997 murder of his former boss, Barry Van Treese. Glossip was convicted and sentenced to death for what prosecutors alleged was a murder-for-hire scheme. Today, the justices ruled that prosecutors' failure to turn over certain evidence to the defense violated Glossip's constitutional right to a fair trial. Glossip is entitled to a new trial. That's what Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote for the majority. Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito dissented, voting to uphold the death sentence. Vivek Ramaswamy is running for the governor of Ohio. Here's the former Republican presidential candidate speaking in Cincinnati yesterday evening.
I will lead Ohio to be the top state in the country, where patriots across America actually flock to instead of Florida and Texas. I will lead Ohio to be the state of excellence in America.
Ramaswamy touted Ohio's fertile farmland, natural resources, and industrial and aviation achievements. The former co-leader of DOGE called for DOGE-like reforms in slashing red tape. Ramaswamy said he would lead the state of Ohio to become a destination for business growth and raising a family. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis declined to endorse Representative Byron Donalds as his successor yesterday. Instead, he indicated his wife, Casey DeSantis, could make a strong candidate to lead the Sunshine State. The governor noted that President Trump had just recently entered office and will need the support of every Republican in Congress. DeSantis ran against Trump in 2024 before dropping out and endorsing the president. Donalds represents Florida's 19th district in the House of Representatives. He has not yet launched a gubernatorial bid. Trump said if he does, the congressman would have his, quote, complete and total endorsement. DeSantis took office back in 2019 and has reached his term limit. Casey DeSantis has not yet announced a campaign. However, she has not ruled one out either. The Federal Aviation Administration has agreed to use SpaceX's Starlink internet system to upgrade information technology networks. SpaceX is a privately held company greatly dependent on federal contracts, primarily from NASA. Starlink satellite internet provides service for government and private customers all around the world. The contract comes while SpaceX CEO Elon Musk is leading efforts to make deep cuts in federal government spending, including staffing cuts at the FAA. Details of the SpaceX contract were not revealed. When we come back, President Donald Trump says tariffs on Canada and Mexico will go forward. What the impact will be and how would this strategy bring more jobs to America? Find out after the break.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
I'm Ilka. I live with my daughter and with my grandchildren. There's a sense of comfort that comes with eating a good meal. We try to make the most, of what we have. We have rent to pay, and then there are lights and there are gas. And while my daughter and I both work, it still just doesn't seem like there's enough to go around sometimes.
Every day, millions of our neighbors face hunger, including 1 in 5 children, and food costs keep rising. Please call or go online right now to join Feeding America with your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Your monthly support can fill plates with nutritious food for families across the country and in your community, thanks to a nationwide network of food banks and volunteers.
If you were over and playing with us, you were part of our family and you were going to eat. A real cook can take nothing and make something.
No one should ever have to wonder if they will have enough to eat, and our neighbors are working hard to feed their families every day. Call or go online now. Visit helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month. 98% of donations go directly to help millions of people facing hunger from coast to coast and in your own community. Use your credit card and you'll get this exclusive canvas grocery bag as a thank you for joining hands with people across America to help end hunger.
Some of the lessons that I hope that my family will take, it is important to treat people the way that you want to be treated. I have carried on the tradition of loving people through food.
Please call right now or go online to make a monthly gift at helpfeedingamerica.org. Your support helps our neighbors bring food home to their families.
Come to Mathis Home today and save big during our presidential savings event with markdowns in every department. We've got all the latest looks for every room in your house at incredible savings. Get huge discounts on hundreds of sofas in all the latest styles. Or shop online and find an unbeatable selection of over 230,000 items. We've got it all. For great quality, all the latest styles, and best value, come to the presidential savings event at Mathis Home.
Combating China's fentanyl, espionage, and unfair business practices. The House Financial Services Committee examined several policies to counter the Chinese Communist Party. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are working to find ways to best counter the Chinese regime. A panel of experts joined the House Financial Services Committee on Tuesday to do just that. One of the most serious and deadly topics was fentanyl being sourced in China.
Transnational criminal organizations, many of them based in China, make millions of dollars off the illegal production and trafficking of this deadly narcotic. The CCP knows this and is allowing it to continue.
The CCP's business model that fuels the fentanyl crisis is also active in many other sectors of crime, including counterfeit goods, intellectual property theft, human trafficking, illicit tobacco, and trade fraud. In fact, data indicates that China leads the world in 11 of the 12 largest categories of transnational crime.
Then there's China's Belt and Road Initiative. That's where China builds infrastructure projects in other countries like ports and uses them as military installations. On top of this, these projects are known to saddle these countries with billions in debt.
Many of these countries are heavily indebted to China, increasingly indebted. The PRC operates out of Cuba, a number of sensitive sites, and we should worry about those and their ability to collect on our operations in the Caribbean. And second, I would also add to that the PRC's ownership of port infrastructure in the region, including around the Panama Canal, can pose security threats.
Too many small countries are being told, well, you borrowed China's money, so you have to give us your port. What we need to do is say to every lender and every credit rating agency that when China makes an unfair loan and you don't repay, that can't be used against the country's credit rating.
This comes after President Trump's executive order last week on a new foreign investment policy to counter China. Now, it aims to curb U.S. investment in Chinese companies and vice versa. Beijing is using this technology to equip its military, as all companies in China are required to share intelligence with authorities.
U.S. venture capital deals have fallen in China by 87%, and by 2023, net foreign investment into China turned negative for the first time on record. But it's also true that U.S. investments made in China still are valued at about $127 billion.
Right now, we subsidize Americans who invest in Chinese stocks. We do so through our tax system and the capital gains allowance. I'm going to ask all witnesses here, please raise your hand if you believe that we should provide subsidies to Americans who choose to invest in Chinese stocks. Let the record show no hand went up.
The panel recommends that Congress take stronger actions against China by passing laws that help law enforcement catch Chinese agents, increase tariffs on China, and other laws that prevent China's investment in semiconductors. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
President Donald Trump says tariffs on Canada and Mexico will go forward. A month-long delay of the tariffs is expiring on March 1st. That's just next week. Those will include 25% tariffs on all Canadian and Mexican imports and 10% on Canadian energy. And this is all just part of a bigger tariff policy from the president, who's also looking at reciprocal tariffs on a wide range of countries. And joining us now is Spencer Morrison. He's a lawyer, editor-in-chief of the National Economics Editorial, and the author of the new book, Reshore: How Tariffs Will Bring Our Jobs Home and Revive the American Dream. Now, thank you for joining us. I want to jump right in here. Steel and aluminum tariffs, they've been a focus for Trump. What will be the single biggest impact on those tariffs, on the American consumer?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on the show. The steel and aluminum tariffs are not going to impact consumers in a meaningful way. I think these tariffs in particular are designed with industrial policy in mind. The goal is to promote the production of American steel and aluminum as opposed to importing those products from foreign countries. So the goal of these particular round of tariffs is more industrial rather than consumer-based.
So how long before we can start seeing manufacturers increasing their workforce or their output?
Well, once the tariff takes effect, it's going to be in the hands of investors and the free market. What ideally we would like to see is consistency in terms of the tariff regime, so that investors in America know on an ongoing basis that they can rely on these tariffs now and in the future. The benefit of doing that is going to be that we'll create a fertile ground for big capital projects to be built in America.
Well, we'll get back to that in a second. But first, is there anything the likes of Canada or China that what they can offer the U.S. in order to maybe dissuade Trump from applying these tariffs?
It's unlikely. The president has been very, very firm on his tariff stance, dating all the way back to the 1980s, before he was even involved in politics. And frankly, the tariff policies are based on sound economic logic, and they're based on sound historical examples. So what is in America's best interests is to realign our trade policy away from economic globalism and dependence on China, Mexico, and other importers in such a way that America can develop and maintain a very strong domestic industrial base. That's going to be how we protect the American dream, by protecting good quality middle-class jobs and having industry, the sort of industry that we need in the event of any conflicts erupting throughout the world.
Now, even before Trump's inauguration, Spencer, we saw Europe and China were already having their own mini trade war of sorts. If things continue to escalate globally, who's going to be the biggest winners and the biggest losers?
There's no question that America will be the biggest winner in this. And the reason for that is because America is running a very large and chronic trade deficit. What this means is that we have all of the buying power, we have all of the leverage in any negotiations. These foreign economies, in particularly China, are tethered to America's consumption. What we offer to them is a significant market for their products, and they're simply not buying our products in return. And just the same way it works on a transactional level at a personal relationships, the buyer is always right. It's the same thing when we're talking about different countries. In this case, America is the buyer, and the buyer is always right. So we have tons of political leverage that we can gain from tariffs and we can use these tariffs to implement our national security policies, our social agendas, and of course to reshore our factories and revive the American economy.
Well, Spencer, so you say the buyer is always right. In that case, how do you expect other countries to respond to Trump's reciprocal tariffs?
I can't speculate on what other countries are going to do. Each country has their own policies and an independent relationship with America. It seems likely that some countries, as a show of force, will impose their own tariffs on American products. And that's totally fine. And in fact, that's to be welcomed, because the reality is that because America is buying much more than we're selling, any reciprocal tariffs that are imposed against American goods are going to do significantly more so-called damage to the economy that's imposing them than they would to America. So it's sort of a case where a country that's imposing tariffs on America would be biting their nose to spite their face. It just doesn't make any sense. And again, this is why America is really in the driver's seat in any sort of trade war.
Well, Spencer, let's bring it back to the topic of reshoring for a second. I mean, it's all great and fine to say, oh, we'll put tariffs on and then all of the manufacturing will come back to the U.S. Americans will buy American-made products. But then the problem is America's not equipped right now to manufacture all of these products. Are we?
Yeah, that's actually a really big problem, and this is a point that I make in my book. Right now, America is manufacturing, we don't even manufacture enough machinery in order to manufacture new machinery. So it is going to take some time to rebuild that industrial base. But I'm confident that it could happen on a relatively quick turnaround. And the reason I say that is because just prior to World War II, America had a very massive industrial push, and it took about 2 years for this country to ramp up its production such that we were the factory of the world. So if President Trump and if the American people are serious about reshoring our industries and reviving the American dream, it's certainly possible, and it could be done on a relatively tight turnaround. But there's going to be some difficulties along the way. One difficulty would be the production of semiconductor chips, as was mentioned in the news clip prior to this interview.
Now, Spencer, before we go here, I want to ask about that. You know, it's not in terms of manufacturing here at home. It's not just about the physical, mechanical manufacturing plant aspect of it all. It's also about the human capital.
Absolutely. And this is one of the main reasons why America needs an industrial policy that promotes the production of goods. The reason for that is not only that there's large capital costs that are input, such as the creation of factories and the machinery, but also we need to have people who are trained and experienced in making all of those products. That's one of the things that we lack right now because so many of our industries have been offshored. We lack the practical on-the-ground experience on how to make products. So it would be in America's best interests to promote a long-term tariff policy that's going to protect these industries and protect that human resource knowledge so that we can pass that down from generation to generation and make sure that America's economy is safeguarded, not just now, but in 20 years, 30 years, 100 years.
Absolutely. I think self-sufficiency is the theme here. Spencer P. Morrison, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
The Congressional DOGE caucus held the first DOGE Day outside of the Capitol building. NTD correspondent Jason Blair now joins us from the Capitol. Jason, good afternoon. What are some of the takeaways?
Hey, good to see you. So the Congressional DOGE caucus held, as you said, the first DOGE Day outside of the Capitol just not that long ago, within the past hour. I was out there. So the DOGE caucus, Congressional DOGE caucus, is is basically a partnership between Congress and the President's Department of Government Efficiency. So the DOGE caucus kind of works on more of a congressional effort to cut waste and streamline, the government, the federal government, and a lot of that is with House bills. A lot of the reps today talked about new bills that they are introducing, some that they are reintroducing to basically streamline and cut waste within the government coming from the Congress side. For example, a rep from New York, Rep. Maliotakis, talked about an effort that basically talks about wasteful, really testing on animals. Here's what she said just not that long ago.
That our government spends upwards of $20 billion annually to conduct inhumane and unnecessary experiments on cats, dogs, monkeys, bunnies, all sorts of animals. And that we've anywhere from hundreds of thousands to perhaps even over 1 million animals that are in captivity for these purposes.
So several reps talked about other House bills that they are bringing in, brand new ones to cut waste. And also, actually, right nearby, there was a small group of protesters that were urging Congress to cut the budget to the Pentagon. Fiona?
Jason, when we talk about protests, I also understand there have been some against DOGE recently. What's the latest and what's the response been from the White House?
Yeah, earlier today, 21 employees at DOGE that worked in the technology area resigned from the department in protest. They submitted a joint resignation letter. They said that they don't want to use their technological expertise to, quote, dismantle critical public services. AP says that they did receive a copy of their resignation letter. I'll read a bit of it for you. It says, quote, "We swore to serve the American people and uphold our oath to the Constitution across presidential administrations. However, it has become clear that we can no longer honor those commitments. And then in response to this, the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt did respond, saying that these kind of protests or lawsuits, other lawsuits, won't deter the president. She said, quote, President Trump will not be deterred from delivering on the promises he made to make our federal government more efficient and more accountable to the hardworking American taxpayers. And then in relation, there was another protest from some workers. They said that they have been laid off from some of the recent cuts, some federal government workers, and they held a sit-in in some of the Senate offices earlier today as well. Here's what one said about what they were doing today. Have a look.
It gives some of these senators an idea of who is directly impacted from all these cuts. It's one thing to just say that you're making these cuts without realizing the direct impact. It's another thing when you see the people who show up saying that they do not have their job anymore because of these all the cuts that they are making. So I hope that by being here today, it gives some of the senators an idea of who's actually impacted, their constituents, actual Americans who have lost their jobs for doing nothing else but doing the job that they were hired to do.
And there was another woman there who said that she was laid off someone overreached her manager. Her manager doesn't even know who exactly laid her off, and they are both trying to figure out who had that authority exactly. Back to you.
Jason Blair reporting from the Capitol. Thank you. The price of eggs is skyrocketing, and now your breakfast bill might be going up too. One restaurant chain is adding a temporary surcharge on meals that include eggs. NTD's Christina Corona reports.
Egg prices are soaring, and now some Denny's locations are passing the cost on to customers. The breakfast chain has confirmed that some of its locations will be adding a temporary egg surcharge due to the nationwide shortage caused by the ongoing bird flu outbreak.
Denny says pricing decisions will vary by restaurant depending on regional supply challenges caused by the nationwide bird flu outbreak. We asked one customer their thoughts on the egg surcharge.
I got $6 the 2+2+2 and had scrambled eggs. I hear that in the news, but I didn't see it on the menu. It's still $6.99, so take advantage while you can.
The virus has affected nearly 19 million birds in just the past month, causing egg prices to soar by more than 15% in January, the largest increase since 2015. Since the bird flu outbreaks in 2022, the U.S. egg supply has been significantly disrupted, leading to a surge in demand and a dramatic rise in prices.
We're not looking at $1.39 dozens anymore. It's gone up to $2.99 and then $3.99, and then it went up to, I think the last time I paid was $5.49 for a dozen. It's been a couple weeks.
This increase has forced major retailers like Trader Joe's, Costco, and Whole Foods to impose purchasing limits on eggs to prevent stockpiling and ensure availability. But now restaurants are joining in on the action. Waffle House was the first national chain to introduce an egg surcharge, adding 50 cents per egg to meals earlier this month. Waffle House said it hopes the price hike will be short-lived, but admitted there's no telling when the shortage will end.
Denny says it's working closely with suppliers to reduce costs for customers while still maintaining its budget-friendly $2 for $6 $8 value menu. But due to eggflation, some breakfast lovers will have to pay a little extra to enjoy their eggs. Reporting from the city of El Monte, Christina Corona, NTD News.
Britain is pledging to increase defense spending as Prime Minister Keir Starmer prepares to meet with President Donald Trump. British overseas aid funding will be cut in order to achieve this. Now, Starmer is seeking Trump's commitment to help peacekeeping forces in a post-war Ukraine. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson reports from London.
Britain will raise its defense spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2027. It's a signal to President Trump that the UK can help boost Europe's security. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said this will begin the biggest sustained increase in defense spending since the end of the Cold War.
But, Mr. Speaker, we must go further still. So, subject to economic and fiscal conditions and aligned with our strategic and operational needs, we will also set a clear ambition for defence spending to rise to 3% of GDP in the next Parliament.
Yeah. Britain last spent 3% of GDP on defence in 1993 to 94. Starmer said the government will spend $17 billion more on defence every year from 2027. Britain's Defence Ministry said it spent £54 billion, or about $68 billion, in the 2023 to 24 financial year. Successive British governments have reduced spending on defence since World War II and the Cold War, instead stepping up investment in health, welfare and education. The new defence increase will be paid for by cutting the international aid budget from 0.5% down to 0.3% in 2027.
I want to be clear to the House. That is not an announcement I am happy to make. I'm proud of our pioneering record on overseas development.
While unhappy about the aid cut, he said it was necessary to offer Ukraine and Europe support in the, quote, new era. European leaders were stunned earlier this month when Trump's administration made clear that Europe would need to step up to provide its own security. It sparked a bout of diplomatic activity. Trump has repeatedly called for NATO nations to spend 5% of GDP on defence. Starmer is due to meet Trump in Washington on Thursday.
When I meet President Trump, I will be clear. I want this relationship to go from strength to strength. But, Mr. Speaker, strength in this world also depends on a new alliance with Europe.
Starmer said he is open to putting British troops in Ukraine to help guarantee security, but only alongside other European nations. He also wants the US to act as a backstop for any European security guarantee to deter Russia from launching a new invasion. So far, Trump and French President Emmanuel Macron have agreed on the deployment of European peacekeeping forces, but Trump has not committed the US to playing a role. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was in Kyiv last week to discuss a critical minerals deal. Now, why are these minerals in Ukraine playing such a critical role here? Take a look.
President Donald Trump has said he wants Ukraine to supply the US with rare earth minerals as a form of payment for financially supporting the country's war efforts against Russia.
So we're looking to do a deal with Ukraine where they're going to secure what we're giving them with their rare earth and other things.
Here is what we know about the critical minerals in Ukraine that could be of interest to the US and other partners. Rare earths such as nickel and lithium are a group of 17 metals deemed critical to the production of batteries and other components used in electric vehicles, cell phones, missile systems and other electronics. And there are no viable substitutes. Here's geographer Julie Michelle Klinger.
They're often described as the vitamins or the spice of industry because they have, over the past several decades, they've enabled, through advances in material science, our technologies to get smaller and faster and stronger and more resilient.
The US Geological Survey considers 50 minerals to be critical, including rare earths. They are essential for industries such as defence, high-tech appliances, aerospace and green energy. According to Ukraine's Institute of Geology, the country possesses a significant deposit of rare earths, including lanthanum and cerium, used in TVs and lighting, neodymium, used in wind turbines and EV batteries, and erbium and yttrium, whose applications range from nuclear power to lasers. The state's geological service said Ukraine has one of Europe's largest confirmed reserves of lithium, vital for batteries, ceramics and glass. It also possesses 1/5 of the globe's reserves of graphite, a key component in electric vehicle batteries and nuclear reactors. So why does Trump want them? Political scientist Jakob Kulik said there are several reasons.
Trump wants rare earths because the American economy is highly dependent on Chinese sources, and it's an economic and national security risk. And in order to avoid that the Chinese will take over Ukrainian rare earths commodities and build up potential mines there, it's an option for the Americans.
Kulik added that not many American companies are able to mine and produce rare earths within the US. Ukrainian data shows that the country has deposits of 22 of the 34 minerals identified by the EU as critical. However, about 40% of Ukraine's metal resources are now under Russian occupation, according to estimates by Ukrainian think tanks. The bulk of Ukraine's coal deposits, which powered its steel industry before the war, have been lost.
When we come back, you might find this hard to believe, but 3 men are on trial in an English court for stealing a golden toilet. We'll have that story after the break. Stay with us.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
Supermodel Cindy Crawford doesn't just walk the red carpet, she rocks it. At 58, she steals the show and wows the press. Hollywood Life exclaims, Cindy Crawford has never lost her stunning glow. While Page 6 raves, she's still as gorgeous as ever. What is Cindy's secret? It's meaningful beauty. And now with new advanced formulas, it's better than ever. Watch as the appearance of lines and wrinkles are diminished in just weeks. It's no wonder everyone's talking about meaningful beauty.
My makeup artist said, your skin has been looking great lately. What products are you using? And I said, I'm using Meaningful Beauty. And she said, really? I've tried Meaningful Beauty before. I love those products. And then the other lady down in the trailer said, I use Meaningful Beauty. I love it.
Our new and improved formulas deliver age-defying ingredients even deeper into the skin where wrinkles begin. And this brand new offer is Cindy's most exciting ever. Because when you order, you'll get Cindy's exclusive Super Brightening Duo, a $120 value absolutely free. First, you'll get 60 of our Revive and Brighten eye masks, the celebrity secret that visibly smooths, awakens, and restores the area around your eyes. Next, discover the power of our Vitamin C Biphase Brightening Oil for an immediate boost of glamour and glow.
I'm not ashamed to say I am 53 years old. Thank you, Cindy.
The total effect of this free gift package? A red carpet ready complexion. Get all this, a $300 value for just $49.95. But you must act quickly. Results guaranteed or your money back.
So make the call or go online now and put yourself on the path to the most beautiful skin of your life. Trust me, it's worth it.
This special offer is not available anywhere else, so don't delay. Scan the code, go to meaningfulbeauty.com, or call the number on your screen now.
I am blind, but I need not see. I know this road is there for me. If I'm really free.
Welcome back to Newsroom. Now get this, 3 men went on trial in an English court on Monday. That was for charges stemming from the heist of an 18-karat golden toilet. The fully functioning toilet, a work titled America by an Italian artist, was stolen from the Churchill family seat of Blenheim Palace in southern England, a major tourist attraction and UNESCO World Heritage Site. The prosecutor said a group of 5 men drove 2 stolen vehicles through locked wooden gates into the palace grounds before dawn on September 14, 2019. They broke in through a window, smashed down a wooden door, ripped the toilet from the wall, and left after 5 minutes in the building. The toilet weighs a whopping 216 pounds and was insured for $6 million. Prosecutors say it was probably divided into smaller amounts of gold to sell off. All right, well, that's one way of ending off an hour. Coming up next, President Trump is signing a new executive order this afternoon, and that and more in the next hour.
Hi friends, Richard Karn here. Now I'm known as the guy who can fix just about anything, but the technology in most appliances requires very special training to fix. My point is, even I know when I've met my match, and that's why my family has Choice Home Warranty. so we won't get stuck with high-priced repairs.
Choice Home Warranty covers over 25 major home systems and appliances. That's your AC, heating, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and so much more.
Imagine for less than a cup of coffee a day, Choice Home Warranty can help protect you from expensive major system and appliance breakdowns that your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover. But you have to call now before it's too late.
Every homeowner should have Choice Home Warranty. Your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover your appliances.
Washing machine, dryer, refrigerator, air condition. If I had any issues arise, they were able to take care of it immediately.
Now, homeowners insurance won't protect you when your home's major systems and appliances break down due to normal wear and tear. But Choice Home Warranty will. They can help cover repairs and replacements.
Choice Home Warranty is the best warranty we've ever used. It would save you so much money in the long run.
Hey, I'm not the only one raving about Choice Home Warranty. They were named a Best Home Warranty Company and Best Claim Service by U.S. News 360 Reviews.
Call Choice Home Warranty now and get access to a nationwide network of over 15,000 technicians and the latest appointment setting technology so you'll know when they're on their way.
If I have an issue with an appliance or something around the house, I just call up Choice Home Warranty and I don't have to worry about that.
So, do what this old DIYer did and call Choice Home Warranty now before something breaks down. Tell them I sent you and get your first month free.
Call Choice Home Warranty before it's too late and get protection for your heating, AC, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and more. Call for your free quote today. Call in the next 5 minutes and get your first month free. 800-360-6782. 800-360-6782.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming. Please call or go online now. With your gift of $19 a month, we'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. Our stories today: House Republican leaders scramble with last-minute meetings to whip up the votes to pass their budget resolution. President Trump wants the Keystone XL Pipeline built now. The project was scrapped under the Biden administration, but now Trump says the government will help streamline its completion. Major companies have been reevaluating diversity policies. At Apple, shareholders have voted to keep the firm's DEI initiatives in place. Wrapping up its final craft creations, fabric retailer Joann is going out of business and closing all locations.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt just introduced the new policy for more media to attend the media briefing. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao brings us more.
So today, a big announcement from the press secretary in that press briefing just ended now at the White House. She announced that going forward, the White House press office will now determine who gets into what we call the pool, which is a selected group of reporters assigned to the president on a daily basis, on a rotation basis. But those are the ones who go into Oval Office remarks, his exclusive press conferences that other journalists at the White House do not get that access to. Meanwhile, today, the White House says that going forward, forward, the White House press office will select those who go into those events instead of the White House Correspondents Association, which has been for years determining who gets into the pool and, of course, the daily rotation of the pool. And the purpose of that, the press secretary says, is to make sure that a select group of D.C.-based journalists should no longer enjoy what she calls a monopoly of the privilege of press access at the White House, adding that all journalists, outlets, and voices deserve a seat at this highly coveted table. Of course, this follows decision by the White House starting on day one of this administration that they're going to allow a new media seats to the White House briefing room, allowing in more journalists of different formats, for example, podcasters, as well as other journalists with a huge online following, giving them also a seat at the briefing room to ask questions. Of course, those who already have been here, including the ones who are in the association who have assigned seats, they still will get their same access. It's just that now the pool will be determined by the press office instead. Meanwhile, today during the briefing, the White House press secretary also said this. Watch.
A select group of D.C.-based journalists should no longer have a monopoly over the privilege of press access at the White House. All journalists, outlets, and voices deserve a seat at this highly coveted table.
Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt also defended the DOGE decision to send out emails through, of course, the Office of Personnel Management to all federal employees, asking them to submit 5 bullet points of what they got done last week. The press secretary said that it's a very simple idea and that a taxpayer in the U.S. deserves that answer from these workers. She asked that President Trump, as well as Elon Musk and DOGE, are working as one unified team, of course, including the entire cabinet. Here's what she said. Watch.
All the Office of Personnel Management is asking, all this administration is asking, President Trump is asking, is for federal workers who live off of the American taxpayer's dime to send 5 bullet points of what they have done in the previous week. That is all we are asking for. We advise federal workers, unless your agency has dictated you not to respond to this email.
And the press secretary confirmed to us at the briefing that Elon Musk will be there at President Trump's first official cabinet meeting tomorrow. She says Elon Musk will be there to talk with the different secretaries of different departments to identify what they call waste, fraud, and abuse. Back to you.
House Republican leaders prepared to put their vision of the budget resolution to a vote, unsure if it has the votes to pass. NTD's Washington correspondent Luis Martinez brings us more.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson is putting the House's version of the budget resolution to a vote on the House floor this Tuesday. At least 4 Republicans are still no votes.
But I think the most important thing to realize is that we do have an opportunity to focus in on the waste, fraud, and abuse. When you look at the numbers, it's $30 to $50 billion a year, which would be, it could be close to $500 billion just in that realm to tackle that waste, fraud, and abuse. And if we make the program more efficient, we could actually make sure that the people who it's intended for are the recipients, our seniors, our developmentally disabled, other people with disabilities, and that's what my focus has been.
Congressman Byron Donalds, a Republican from Florida, urged his fellow lawmakers to vote in favor of the House's budget resolution.
What do you have to say to those House Republicans who think that there's not enough spending cuts?
As far as I'm concerned, we need to be cutting as much spending as possible. We're spending $7 trillion a year. A lot of that is wasteful COVID-era spending from the Biden administration. So I would really implore some of my members in Congress who are concerned about re-election prospects to do what's right fiscally for the nation, and that success will lead to their re-election efforts in the future.
Congressman Pete Aguilar, the chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, dared House Republicans to face their constituents after today's vote.
Our challenge to House Republicans is after you pass this budget today, which cuts Medicaid by $880 billion, go home and have a town hall with your constituents. See how they feel about what you just did. If you're going to rip away health care from people, then you ought to be able to defend your vote directly to them. But that would require the House Republican Conference growing a spine.
The House's version of the budget resolution asks for $1.5 trillion in spending cuts and allocates $4.5 trillion to extend the Trump-era tax cuts. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Co-chairs of the Congressional DOGE caucus held a press conference moments ago to discuss their latest priorities. Florida Representative Aaron Bean and his Republican colleagues proposed new legislation in an effort to reduce the size of government and rein in spending.
I'm excited to sponsor, along with my good friend Joni Ernst, Drain the Swamp Act. Drain the Swamp Act says this: each agency needs to relocate 30% of the workforce outside of the district. Let's put them in the heartland. That's where people are in need of services, so let's relocate that. And then today, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time before the press, we've launched the Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is Act. I'm excited to announce that I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. The American people are making reductions right now at their dinner table. They're talking about, honey, what can we cut back on, what we can do, how are we going to afford Biden's eggs? We're going to make some reductions. The Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is says to every congressional office, let's reduce the amount that we're spending in your office by $100,000 over the course of a year. Let's just trim and tighten our belt a little bit, and that's the money that can be used to pay for expenses rather than put anything else on our credit card. That's what we don't want. We got a CR coming due in, 2 to 3 weeks, and the last thing anybody wants to see, including the American taxpayer, we don't want to see just Congress punting and just putting it on our credit card. We want real reductions.
New York Representative Nicole Maliotakis proposed a bill to ban federal funding for inhuman animal testing. Maliotakis said the legislation would eliminate $20 billion of annual government spending. South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman introduced 2 bills. The Fair Value Accounting and Budget Act would provide transparency into government loans, and the Cost Act would require greater disclosure from projects that use federal funds. And there's one exception in the sweeping cut to government funding by the Trump administration. Secretary of State Marco Rubio lifted the freeze on more than $1 billion in U.S. defense aid for strategic allies in the Indo-Pacific, and that's Taiwan and the Philippines. The decision is a strong signal to Beijing. The administration's tough stance against the Chinese military aggression in the region. The exemption covers $870 million for Taiwan and $336 million for the Philippines. The decision comes after Beijing's continuous aggression in the region. Last week, Beijing sent a Navy helicopter to tail a Filipino civilian airplane in the South China Sea, coming within less than 10 feet of air collision. Beijing also continues to send warships and warplanes to harass Taiwan, which is a self-governed democracy. As for the exemption, 3 days after being sworn in as the new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio issued a sweeping order to pause almost all U.S. foreign aid for 90 days, citing the need for a thorough review of all programs. More tension in the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan's Coast Guard say they have detained a China-linked cargo ship after an undersea cable was disconnected. A statement from Taiwan's Coast Guard says the ship did not respond to repeated communication attempts. Soon after the ship dropped anchor, a Taiwan telecom company detected the internet cable was cut. The ship is registered in the African nation of Togo, but with Chinese funding and a Chinese crew. Taiwan's Coast Guard says the ship had lingered in waters near the cable since Saturday. A similar incident occurred in January. Taiwanese authorities say this could be a gray zone tactic by Beijing that's a reference to provocative actions below what can be considered as acts of war. Taiwan's Coast Guard took the vessel and its crew to Taiwan and is investigating the matter. The Supreme Court threw out the murder conviction and death penalty for an Oklahoma man who was found guilty in the killing of a motel owner 27 years ago. His wife called the decision an answered prayer. Richard Glossip has steadfastly maintained his innocence in the 1997 murder of his former boss, Barry Van Treese. Glossip was convicted and sentenced to death for what prosecutors alleged was a murder-for-hire scheme. Today, the justices ruled that prosecutors' failure to turn over certain evidence to the defense violated Glossip's constitutional right to a fair trial. Glossip is entitled to a new trial, Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote for the majority. Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito dissented, voting to uphold the death sentence. Coming up after the break, the Keystone Pipeline could be making a comeback. The plan for a gas pipeline from the U.S. to Canada was scrapped at the start of the Biden administration. That and more when we return.
I'm Amy Grant, and I want to talk to you from my heart about the heart. I would have been the last person on the list to say this woman has a problem with her heart. So no, there was nothing about my life that said, you have a ticking time bomb in your chest. But I did. I wound up in the office of a cardiologist because I was there with my husband. And at the tail end of that, the cardiologist looked at me and said, I want to see you. No one was more surprised than I was to learn I was living with a rare heart condition. He said, Amy, this condition, you'll be fine, and then catastrophic. A few months later, I had open heart surgery that saved my life. And I owe it to the research and life-saving medical breakthroughs developed by the American Heart Association. That's why I'm asking you to join me and become a monthly donor to the American Heart Association. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. If this could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, but your support can save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt you can wear to show you're part of a community of monthly donors working to help save more lives like mine. I'm grateful for the American Heart Association. Their research gave me more time to do the things I love with the people I love. So listen to your heart. I'm here today because I did. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor and help save even more lives. Thank you.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
Divinely inspired traditional oil painting inspires compassion. Artwork created in truth and beauty illuminates a path to goodness. Rediscover traditional art, revive classical culture. We warmly invite oil painters from around the world to participate in the 7th NTD International Figure Painting Competition, a celebration of classical realism. Please visit oilpainting.ntdtv.com.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
So there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
And for today's business matters, the Federal Aviation Administration has agreed to use SpaceX's Starlink internet system to upgrade information technology networks. Now, SpaceX is a privately held company greatly dependent on federal contracts, primarily from NASA. Starlink satellite internet provides service for government and private customers around the world. The contract comes while SpaceX CEO Elon Musk is leading efforts to make deep cuts in federal government spending, including staffing cuts at the FAA. Details of the SpaceX contract were not revealed. And while major companies have recently scrapped diversity initiatives, Apple shareholders have voted to keep DEI policies in place. Conservative group the National Center for Public Policy Research submitted a proposal to cut the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program. Supporters of the proposal argue that recent legal changes mean Apple would see an increase in discrimination cases. Apple said it has oversight in place to avoid legal risk and that the proposal inappropriately restricted management. Now, if it were up to President Trump, the Keystone XL oil pipeline would already be built, and now he's trying to make it happen. In a social media post, Trump urged the company that was building the pipeline to come back. He said there would be easy approvals and an almost immediate start. The $9 billion controversial project was first proposed in 2008 to bring 830,000 barrels of oil per day from Canada to the U.S. It was halted in 2021 when former President Joe Biden pulled a key permit for the U.S. stretch of the project. The company that was working on the project said that in an email that it has moved on. The Trump administration recently released its America First investment policy, the entirety of which aims at combating the Chinese regime and its military. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
The Trump administration's new foreign investment policy aims at countering China and the regime's military. The White House says it will accommodate foreign investors in proportion to how much they distance themselves from the Chinese Communist Party and other U.S. adversaries, including Russia, Iran, and North Korea. The White House says that the Chinese Communist Party invests in American companies to obtain its technology and equip China's military. These fines go straight to the Chinese military. That's because Chinese law requires Chinese civilian companies to support its military and intelligence. So the Trump administration plans on using, quote, all necessary legal instruments to stop Chinese agents from investing in U.S. technology, healthcare, agriculture, energy, among other areas. Now, there's another side to this. The U.S. also says it will work to prevent U.S. companies from investing in the Chinese military civil fusion. Now, that means new restrictions are coming to U.S. companies that seek to invest in China's semiconductors, AI, aerospace, advanced manufacturing, among other sectors that could contribute to its militaries, all of which is aimed to increase funding in the U.S. and discourage investments in the CCP. And it seems to be working. Apple said on Monday it would invest $500 billion in 4 years to fund an AI server factory in Texas. The factory is expected to create 20,000 new jobs. Many of Apple's products are made in China and face an added 10% tariff imposed by President Trump earlier this month. On Truth Social, Trump thanked Apple and its CEO Tim Cook, saying the move reflects the company's faith in his administration. Now, this comes as Chinese leader Xi Jinping spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin over the phone recently. The U.S. is working to quickly resolve the Russia-Ukraine war, now entering its third year. That's after President Trump spoke with Putin late last week, pledging to strengthen their country's relationship. On the campaign trail, Trump said that U.S. policies of isolating Russia and sanctioning oil following the country's invasion of Ukraine made Russia more reliant on China's economy.
He said the one thing you never want to happen is you never want Russia and China uniting. We united them because of the oil. I'm going to have to ununite them, and I think I can do that too. And they're natural enemies because Russia has massive land and China needs it.
Now, the U.S.'s work to resolve this war is sparking speculation that the Trump administration may shift its focus to countering threats from communist China. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Meanwhile, the FDA hit with another lawsuit over popular weight loss and diabetes drugs, this time over for Novo Nordisk, Wegovy, and Ozempic. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration pulled the treatments from the shortage list last week. Drug compounders who mix or alter ingredients to make medications are now suing. They claim that the FDA's funding for the decision was arbitrary. The finding. The FDA is also facing a similar lawsuit over Eli Lilly's rival weight loss and diabetes drugs, Zepbound and Mounjaro. This is also over the fact that Compounding pharmacies are also allowed to make and sell large amounts of brand name medicines only if they are in short supply. The FDA declined to comment on the lawsuit. And changing track, Denny's is adding an egg surcharge at some of its locations amid shortages and higher egg prices. The diner chain declined to specify the exact amount the surcharge. Denny's said in a statement, pricing decisions are being made restaurant by restaurant. Now, Denny's isn't the only restaurant attempting to cope with the egg supply shortage. Waffle House recently added a 50-cent price hike for meals that include eggs. Major retailers, including Costco and Trader Joe's, have had to take action as well, imposing limits on how many eggs one customer can buy. New York Attorney General Letitia James announced on Monday a settlement of close to $17 million with delivery platform DoorDash. The AG said the company included customer tips as part of workers' base pay. More than 60,000 New York delivery workers may be eligible for settlement payments from DoorDash. NTD Sean Marshall has the details.
The food delivery app DoorDash will pay almost $17 million to settle claims that it unfairly used customer tips to subsidize the wages of its delivery workers in New York, rather than letting drivers keep the tips on top of their guaranteed pay, Attorney General Letitia James said Monday. Between May 2017 and September 2019, DoorDash used a guaranteed pay model that let Dashers see how much they would be paid before accepting a delivery.
Instead of giving workers the full tips that they rightfully deserved, DoorDash used the customer tips to subsidize the base pay that they had already guaranteed workers. It was basically a bait and switch where customers thought they were supporting delivery workers, but instead they were subsidizing DoorDash instead.
The New York Attorney General explained the tipping issue in simplified terms in an X account posting that said, "Here's an example of DoorDash's bait and switch. If DoorDash guaranteed a worker $10 and a customer tipped $3, that worker was paid only $10, with DoorDash using the tip to meet its guaranteed pay. DoorDash's deceptive model tricked our workers to line its own pockets."
Thank you so much to the entire team, to everybody that has worked, to the AG for delivering this landmark settlement that really puts $16.75 million into the pockets of hardworking deliveristas whose income was stolen by DoorDash.
DoorDash workers who made deliveries between May 2017 and September 2019 in New York are eligible for the settlement money. They'll be contacted by a settlement administrator with information about how to file a claim, and DoorDash must pay up to $1 million in settlement administrator costs, in addition to the restitution. In a statement, DoorDash said, "While we believe that our practices properly represented how Dashers were paid during this period, we are pleased to have resolved this years-old matter and look forward to continuing to offer a flexible way for millions of people to reach their financial goals." The company said the old pay model is no longer in use. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Millions in jackpots are now being investigated in Texas. Governor Greg Abbott has directed the Texas Rangers to look into 2 jackpots involving virtual ticket sales. This includes an $83 million prize from this month and a $95 million prize won 3 years ago by a group of investors. Lottery tickets may be bought virtually in Texas using firms known as lottery courier services. Lawmakers are blasting the Texas Lottery Commission for failing to regulate lottery couriers. Critics argue the practice makes it impossible to verify buyers and is vulnerable to money laundering. It's the final stitch for Joann crafters and its stores. After 8 decades, the fabric and craft retailer is going out of business and closing all of its locations. For generations, Joann was the destination for quilters, knitters, and craft lovers. But last month, it filed for bankruptcy for a second time in a year. The retailer reported sluggish demand and inventory shortages. In a statement on its website, Joann said its leadership made every possible effort to keep the company in business. Joann said dates for store closures or changes to the website would be soon posted as early as possible. And the outlook for China's property sector has turned gloomier. This according to 10 analysts polled from February 12th to 24th. Home prices were expected to drop at a faster pace this year than previously estimated. Analysts expect China's property market will take a long time to stabilize. It's due in part to long-term population decline in China. And at its peak in 2021, China's property sector accounted for around a quarter of the economy. Last year, Beijing took unprecedented steps in an effort to stabilize the crisis-stricken property sector, including urging local authorities to purchase unsold homes from heavily indebted developers. But these key measures had little impact. Analysts projected a 2.5% decline in home prices this year, and property sales were expected to shrink 5.7%. Unilever surprised investors by ousting its chief executive officer today. His replacement has already been named. Here's more.
Unilever's chief executive Heinz Schumacher will step down after less than 2 years in the job. The Ben & Jerry's and Dove soap owner made the surprise announcement Tuesday. His departure comes just weeks after the firm announced underwhelming full-year earnings. Schumacher had reset the group's strategy to address years of underperformance. He also laid out cost cuts last year, including separating its ice cream division and cutting thousands of jobs. The consumer goods giant faces pressure from investors to revive its fortunes. Unilever chairman Ian Meakins said the board was pleased with the company's performance last year, but has much further to go to deliver best-in-class results. Schumacher is due to be replaced by finance chief Fernando Fernandez. Meakins said the board was impressed by Fernandez's decisive and results-oriented approach. Unilever, which also owns Magnum and Hellmann's Mayonnaise, made no change to this year's outlook, and the board said it was committed to further accelerating Schumacher's growth plan. Schumacher will step down in March and leave the company on May 31st. Unilever said he is leaving by mutual agreement. The CEO's surprise departure hit Unilever's shares, which fell 2% on Tuesday. They had gained more than 9% since Schumacher took over.
Meanwhile, Vietnam is in a highly vulnerable position over reciprocal U.S. tariffs based on public data. Goods exported to the U.S. accounted for 30% of the nation's gross domestic product last year. By comparison, China and Japan's exports to the U.S. account for around 3%. A number of U.S. corporations made investments in Vietnam during Trump's first administration. Its booming exports combined with its limited imports from the U.S. could make it stand out from potential reciprocal tariffs. To help dodge tariffs, Vietnamese officials have flagged some measures, including compromising on unequal duties and possibly purchasing U.S. liquefied natural gas. And Home Depot has broken its long losing streak. On Tuesday, the company said sales at stores open at least a year grew 0.8% last year. That ends 8 straight quarters of declining sales. The company also gave an upbeat forecast for 2025, saying sales at stores open at least a year would grow by 1%. It could be good news for more than just Home Depot. The company is America's largest home improvement retailer and is considered a bellwether of the U.S. housing market and economy. And according to several recent surveys, many Americans are worried about their wallets. The Conference Board's Consumer Confidence Index was down for its 3rd consecutive month in February. The National Federation of Independent Businesses Uncertainty Index increased in January to the 3rd highest rating in its history. And a new survey from Wells Fargo shows roughly 75% of adults and teens say they plan on cutting back on spending due to economic worries. And as well, Nippon Steel plans to use its current merger agreement for U.S. Steel as a starting point for talks with the U.S. government. Here's more.
Japan's Nippon Steel has a plan to get talks going with the U.S. government. Company president Tadashi Imai said Tuesday his firm could use its current merger agreement to buy U.S. Steel as a starting point for discussions as it tries to revive the deal. Earlier this month, U.S. President Donald Trump said Nippon's bid for U.S. Steel would take the form of an investment instead of a purchase. He made the announcement alongside Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba at the Oval Office. Trump also said he wouldn't mind if Nippon took a minority stake in U.S. Steel. The bid was previously blocked by former President Joe Biden. Imai said the current merger agreement will serve as a starting point for discussions with the US government. He added the firm will talk with the US government ahead of how it can get Trump's approval. Nippon is the world's fourth biggest steelmaker and bid for US Steel in December 2023. It promised billions of dollars in investment to revamp its aging infrastructure. The company also pledged to keep its headquarters in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The deal faced political headwinds from the start as both Trump and Biden vowed to stop the deal. The Biden administration ultimately halted it over national security concerns. In January, the steelmakers asked the courts to reject the block.
E-cigarette companies are changing their corporate structures amid scrutiny from the Food and Drug Administration, complicating efforts to get their products off the streets. A Chinese vape giant moved operations to a British Virgin Islands company from the U.S., but the company's unauthorized Lost Mary vapes are still widely available on America's streets. A company spokesperson said it has exited the U.S. market and is not sidestepping authorities. A Texas firm, Ludicrous Distro, dumped its Isco Bars brand after the FDA banned it and now acts as a distributor for devices from third parties. Ludicrous Distro didn't explain its change in business strategy, but says it seeks to comply with FDA policies. The FDA says it's aware of such practices and is monitoring the situation without naming specific companies. Land and sea all in one. An Egyptian man has combined driving with sailing in a new watery vehicle that's produced locally and sold globally. Here's more.
It's a boat, it's a car, it's Jet Car Chrome, a car-shaped vehicle made for the water. It started as a small project for Egyptian entrepreneur Carmen Amin.
Even the people closest to us don't believe our products are Egyptian. Egyptian-made, all handmade.
Amin launched the company 6 years ago with a budget of $50,000. Now he says it's worth $5 million and he sells his cars around the globe.
We export to 70 countries, the largest of which is the U.S., and to Canada and countries in Europe like Spain, France, Greece, and Cyprus. Basically all the coastal countries.
In all, Amin says he's manufactured 950 cars. The vehicles are manufactured on demand at a large factory in Giza. Most of the parts are made locally. Only the engines are imported from Japan and modified based on customer requests. One Jet car costs between $20,000 and $40,000 depending on options. The car is highly customizable from color to shape. Manufacturing takes about 3 weeks to complete. While Amin is proud to see the cars driven all over the world, he's especially proud to see the vehicles hit local waterways.
It's a good feeling, of course, to have a locally made car to drive in the Nile and in all our waters. The Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. It's a good feeling. Like it's driving in its own territory. It's the car's home country.
Okay, now on to Wall Street. Major indexes were lower today, and that's with the tech-heavy Nasdaq hitting a 6-week low. And all this coming as Treasury yields tumbled on signs of softening U.S. growth and uncertainty over Trump administration policies. Now, over in Europe, Germany's election result buoyed the euro, and European shares actually closed up. Meanwhile, negative surprises here in the United States. Economic data have accelerated this month, and this is led by some unwelcome pickups in things like consumer inflation expectation, that's one, and more recently by a drop in overall business activity. All right, with that, all on today's Business Matters. Coming up after the break, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis doesn't endorse prominent Florida Congressman Brian Donalds to be his successor. Find out who he endorses instead. That and more when we come back.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
What if kids in America didn't have to go to bed hungry tonight? What if our moms, dads, and grandparents could put healthy food on the table every day to help us grow strong? What if all of our friends and neighbors had fresh food too, and there was no hunger at all in America? And what if there was a way today for you to help? Call now or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. So many of us don't have enough food to eat, but your monthly gift means families across the country and in your community can fill plates with food. Kids can get healthy meals year-round, even when school's out. And our neighbors can have fresh food. Food that moms, dads, entire families need to thrive. But right now, more people are facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. It takes all of us to make that happen. Will you help too? Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give just $19 a month, and we'll send you this free canvas grocery bag. It's our way of saying thank you for helping to end hunger for our neighbors. Because no kid, no mom or dad, nobody should go hungry in America. Nobody. So what if today was the day you could help nourish futures for our friends, our families, for all of us? Ending hunger is possible. What if we end it together?
Call or give online today at helpfeedingamerica.org and your gift can be doubled.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Vivek Ramaswamy is running for the governor of Ohio. Here's the former Republican presidential candidate speaking in Cincinnati yesterday evening.
I will lead Ohio to be the top state in the country, where patriots across America actually flock to instead of Florida and Texas. I will lead Ohio to be the state of excellence in America.
Ramaswamy touted Ohio's fertile farmland, natural resources, and industrial and aviation achievements. The former co-leader of DOGE called for DOGE-like reforms in slashing red tape. Ramaswamy said he would lead the state of Ohio to become a destination for business growth and raising a family. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis declined to endorse Representative Byron Donalds as his successor yesterday. Instead, he indicated his wife, Cassie DeSantis, could make a strong candidate to lead the Sunshine State. The governor noted that President Trump had just recently entered office and will need the support of every Republican in Congress. DeSantis ran against Trump in 2024 before dropping out and endorsing the president. Donalds represents Florida's 19th district in the House of Representatives. He has not yet launched a gubernatorial bid. Trump said if he does, the congressman would have his, quote, complete and total endorsement. DeSantis took office in 2019 and has reached his term limit. Casey DeSantis has not yet announced a campaign. However, she has not ruled out one. Britain pledges to increase defense spending as Prime Minister Starmer prepares to meet President Trump. British overseas aid funding will be cut to achieve this. Starmer is seeking Trump's commitment to help peacekeeping forces in a post-war Ukraine. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more for us from London.
Britain will raise its defense spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2027. It's a signal to President Trump that the UK can help boost Europe's security. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said this will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War.
But, Mr. Speaker, we must go further still. So, subject to economic and fiscal conditions and aligned with our strategic and operational needs, we will also set a clear ambition for defence spending to rise to 3% of GDP in the next Parliament.
Britain last spent 3% of GDP on defence in 1993 to 94. Starmer said the government will spend $17 billion more on defence every year from 2027. Britain's Defence Ministry said it spent £54 billion, or about $68 billion, in the 2023 to 24 financial year. Successive British governments have reduced spending on defence since World War II and the Cold War, instead stepping up investment in health, welfare and education. The new defence increase will be paid for by cutting the international aid budget from 0.5% down to 0.3% in 2027.
I want to be clear to the House. That is not an announcement I am happy to make. I'm proud of our pioneering record on overseas development.
While unhappy about the aid cut, he said it was necessary to offer Ukraine and Europe support in the, quote, new era. European leaders were stunned earlier this month when Trump's administration made clear that Europe would need to step up to provide its own security. It sparked a bout of diplomatic activity. Trump has repeatedly called for NATO nations to spend 5% of GDP on defense. Starmer is due to meet Trump in Washington on Thursday.
When I meet President Trump, I will be clear. I want this relationship to go from strength to strength. But, Mr. Speaker, strength in this world also depends on a new alliance with Europe.
Starmer said he is open to putting British troops in Ukraine to help guarantee security, but only alongside other European nations. He also wants the US to act as a backstop for any European security guarantee to deter Russia from launching a new invasion. So far, Trump and French President Emmanuel Macron have agreed on the deployment of European peacekeeping forces, but Trump has not committed the US to playing a role. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
Combating China's fentanyl espionage and unfair business practices, the House Financial Services Committee examined several policies to counter the Chinese Communist Party. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are working to find ways to best counter the Chinese regime. A panel of experts joined the House Financial Services Committee on Tuesday to do just that. One of the most serious and deadly topics was fentanyl being sourced in China.
Transnational criminal organizations, many of them based in China, make millions of dollars off the illegal production and trafficking of this deadly narcotic. The CCP knows this and is allowing it to continue.
The CCP's business model that fuels the fentanyl crisis is also active in many other sectors of crime, including counterfeit goods, intellectual property theft, human trafficking, illicit tobacco, and trade fraud. In fact, data indicates that China leads the world in 11 of the 12 largest categories of transnational crime.
Then there's China's Belt and Road Initiative. That's where China builds infrastructure projects in other countries like ports and uses them as military installations. On top of this, these projects are known to saddle these countries with billions in debt.
Many of these countries are heavily indebted to China, increasingly indebted. The PRC operates out of Cuba, a number of sensitive sites, and we should worry about those and their ability to collect on our operations in the Caribbean. And second, I would also add to that the PRC's ownership of port infrastructure in the region, including around the Panama Canal, can pose security threats.
Too many small countries are being told, well, you borrowed China's money, so you have to give us your port. What we need to do is say to every lender and every credit rating agency that when China makes an unfair loan and you don't repay, that can't be used against the country's credit rating.
This comes after President Trump's executive order last week on a new foreign investment policy to counter China. Now, it aims to curb U.S. investment in Chinese companies and vice versa. Beijing is using this technology to equip its military, as all companies in China are required to share intelligence with authorities.
U.S. venture capital deals have fallen in China by 87%, and by 2023, net foreign investment into China turned negative for the first time on record. But it's also true that U.S. investments made in China still are valued at about $127 billion.
Right now, we subsidize Americans who invest in Chinese stocks. We do so through our tax system and the capital gains allowance. I'm going to ask all witnesses here, please raise your hand if you believe that we should provide subsidies to Americans who choose to invest in Chinese stocks. Let the record show no hand went up.
The panel recommends that Congress take stronger actions against China by passing laws that help law enforcement catch Chinese agents, increase tariffs on China, and other laws that prevent China's investment in semiconductors. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was in Kyiv last week to discuss a critical minerals deal. Why are the minerals in Ukraine playing a critical role here? Take a look.
President Donald Trump has said he wants Ukraine to supply the US with rare earth minerals as a form of payment for financially supporting the country's war efforts against Russia.
So we're looking to do a deal with Ukraine where they're going to secure what we're giving them with their rare earth and other things.
Here is what we know about the critical minerals in Ukraine that could be of interest to the US and other partners. Rare earths such as nickel and lithium are a group of 17 metals deemed critical to the production of batteries and other components used in electric vehicles, cell phones, missile systems and other electronics. And there are no viable substitutes. Here's geographer Julie Michelle Klinger.
They're often described as the vitamins or the spice of industry because they have, over the past several decades, they've enabled, through advances in material science, our technologies to get smaller and faster and stronger and more resilient.
The US Geological Survey considers 50 minerals to be critical, including rare earths. They are essential for industries such as defense, high-tech appliances, aerospace and green energy. According to Ukraine's Institute of Geology, the country possesses a significant deposit of rare earths, including lanthanum and cerium, used in TVs and lighting, neodymium, used in wind turbines and EV batteries, and erbium and yttrium, whose applications range from nuclear power to lasers. The state's Geological Service said Ukraine has one of Europe's largest confirmed reserves of lithium, vital for batteries, ceramics and glass. It also possesses 1/5 of the globe's reserves of graphite, a key component in electric vehicle batteries and nuclear reactors. So why does Trump want them? Political scientist Jakob Kalik said there are several reasons.
Trump wants rare earths because the American economy is highly dependent on Chinese sources, and it's an economic and national security risk. And in order to avoid that the Chinese will take over Ukrainian rare earths commodities and build up potential mines there, it's an option for the Americans.
Kalik added that not many American companies are able to mine and produce rare earths within the US. Ukrainian data shows that the country has deposits of 22 of the 34 minerals identified by the EU as critical. However, about 40% of Ukraine's metal resources are now under Russian occupation, according to estimates by Ukrainian think tanks. The bulk of Ukraine's coal deposits, which powered its steel industry before the war, have been lost.
Coming up after the break, 3 men were in court over stealing a fully functioning toilet made of gold. It wasn't just expensive, but it was heavy too. Find out more when we come back.
If joint pain from aging is slowing you down, Omega XL can help you get back in the saddle, just like it did for John Walsh.
Today I'm here at my ranch exercising some of my polo ponies. Got to be really fit to ride these horses. So as you get older, it gets tougher. I was starting to suffer some of that business, and then I ran into somebody who said, look, you should try Omega XL, and look what it's done. I feel better than I felt in the last 30 years.
I'm Reve Walsh. I'm John Walsh's wife. I ride fox hunters, and sometimes I'm in the saddle for 3-5 hours at a time. A lot of work out here.
I wouldn't have been able to do this. Muck a stall, throw hay, do all the things that needs to be done on a ranch a couple years ago. But Omega XL gave me the ability to get back in the saddle. It works great.
Once you try it, you don't want to be without it. Makes a huge difference.
It does. Take it every single day, and you know, there's a benefit. It's made you a lot nicer to me.
If you've been living with pain, it's time to get this special offer, the Omega XL, the joint health supplement that millions have trusted for more than 20 years. Omega XL, it's sourced from the green-lipped mussel, exclusively found in the pristine waters of New Zealand, some of the cleanest waters on Earth. Omega XL, it's natural, drug-free, and it's backed by more than 40 years of clinical research that show it really works. Try Omega XL today. Pick up your phone and call the number at the bottom of your screen right now for a special offer. Buy one, get two free. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3, a value of more than $100. But call today and you pay only $39.95. That's a savings of more than 60%. Plus, it's backed by our 60-day money-back guarantee.
Try it. You got nothing to lose.
Call or go online right now to get this special offer. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3 for only $39.95. Call now.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50-enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
Welcome back. Hikers have taken advantage of freezing winter weather in Europe to get a rare glimpse inside short-lived and potentially lethal ice caves. The caves appeared on a glacier in eastern Switzerland.
Well, it feels amazing. I feel surpassed. You know, when I walk in, it's like something that is very big compared to me. I feel like I'm a small creature when I'm in this here, and I feel like I'm a part of nature.
It's just so beautiful here. We came here for the first time, and we really wanted to see these glacier caves, and we're just fascinated by it. It's just fantastic.
Hey, it's the first time I'm here. My first feeling, intuition, when I was in this big one here, I thought it's a door to a parallel world. And if you go very, very deep, you might never come back.
Torrential meltwater from the glacier carves out the tunnels as it surges out under the ice. The cavities are enlarged further by warm air currents flowing into the gap. During cold winter months, freezing conditions allow visitors to walk inside some tunnels, but in summer they become particularly dangerous or even impossible to visit. This as thawing ice blocks can fall and the water stream is torrential. 3 men went on trial in an English court on Monday for charges stemming from the heist of an 18-karat golden toilet. The fully functioning toilet, a work titled America by an Italian artist, was stolen from the Churchill family seat of Blenheim Palace in southern England, and this is a major tourist attraction and UNESCO World Heritage Site. The prosecutor said a group of 5 men drove 2 stolen vehicles through locked wooden gates into the palace grounds before dawn on September 14, 2019. They broke in through a window, smashed down a wooden door, ripped the toilet from the wall, and left after 5 minutes in the building. The toilet weighs 216 pounds and was insured for $6 million. Prosecutors say it was probably divided into smaller amounts of gold to sell it off. Moments ago, President Trump signed more executive orders in the Oval Office. Here's a playback.
Airlines are... I've gotten calls from the heads of airlines saying they stop in Europe and they're getting charged all sorts of taxes that they never even heard of. They stop and they're getting fined and charged, and they do it only with American companies. They're not doing it to other countries, so we're stopping it. And we have another thing, we have another step to go, and if they don't shape up, as an example, Apple has had to pay like $17 billion in a lawsuit that nobody thought was worth anything. And I won't get into the judge or the decision or how the decision was arrived, but I'm pretty good at this stuff, and I think it's disgraceful. And Google's being sued, Facebook's being sued, and many others are being sued by their so-called government, if you call it a government, EU, and they don't treat us right. They don't treat us right as a country. So we're going to protect our companies. We have to protect our companies. So we're not going to have any companies left anymore. I also want to thank Apple, though, for announcing they're going to invest $500 billion in our country. That's the biggest investment anybody's probably made to this date. And they're going to do it very quickly, and that's because of tariffs. They don't want to pay the tariffs, and they feel very strongly about the country. Now, they wouldn't have done it without us. Without the Trump administration, they wouldn't have done it. But they feel very strongly about the direction of the country. The polls have shown that, too. The polls are coming out showing direction of the company is of the country is the best they've ever seen, actually. Best they've ever seen. So I just want to thank Tim Cook and Apple for the confidence. $500 billion. That's the biggest investment anyone has made in a short period of time.
Mr. President, have you spoken today with the House Republican holdouts who
Yeah.
said they would not be supporting the budget resolution?
Well, I'm not involved in that. They know what I want, and the Senate knows what I want, too. And the Senate's got a bill that's very strong, having to do with the taxes, because the taxes is what's bringing all these companies in. So, and without it, by the way, you'd have to double your own taxes. Everybody would be doubled up, and you'd have the biggest tax increase ever. So the House has a bill and the Senate has a bill, and I'm looking at them both, and I'll make decisions. But I don't know where they are in the vote. I know the Senate's doing very well, and the House is doing very well. But each one of them has things that I like. So we'll see if we can come together.
Mr. President, can you clarify, hopefully once and for all, what your expectations are with this email to federal employees? What are you going to use that information for? And do you see it as voluntary, like OPM has said, or mandatory?
Yeah, well, it's somewhat voluntary, but it's also, if you don't answer, I guess you get fired. What it really
I'm
is,
still lost on that.
What it is do people exist? We have this massive government with millions of people, and nobody knows who's working for the government, who's not. So what they're doing is they're sending out a letter to everybody, and they're saying, what were the things you did last week? Mm-hmm. I guess they ask for 5. And if people are working, it's easy. I could tell you 5 things I did last week. I could tell you 5 things I did 6 weeks ago, right? If they're there and they're working, they're able to say they did 5 things during work. And that means they're working and they're with us and they have no further obligation. If they're not, it could be there's no such person. It could be that the person's no longer working. They're no longer living at that address. They may be moved. Maybe they moved to a different country, or maybe the person doesn't exist. And we then take that person off the payroll, and we save a lot of money by doing that. But that's one of the only ways. I think it's a very smart thing. And it says, if you don't answer, essentially, there's a penalty to pay. Like, that's the end of the job.
Well, Musk has said that. The order itself doesn't say that. I think that's part of the confusion. Is he speaking for you when he says?
Yeah. Everybody speaks for me. I'm the one. I'll take responsibility. The old statement, the buck stops here, right? Famous statement. Well, I can say the same thing. The buck stops here. No, we have to find out if people are getting paid and they're not working. And, they have a problem. Let's say they have another job, and then they write in false statements. It's a big problem if they write in false statements. They may be working for somebody else but getting paid by the U.S. government, and that would mean that they're not allowed to be doing that. They're not allowed to be working for us and be working for somebody else. We're paying them a lot of money. We're paying them. So we'll see. That solves that problem. Most people aren't willing to say that, we're doing this, and this, and this for the U.S. government, and yet they're at another job, because that's a big problem for them if they do that. So in some cases, they're not writing back. And if they don't write back, they end up eventually losing their job. We give them extensions, but, that was something we thought about a long time ago. We give them extensions, but we'll see. We have to make sure, number one, that we have people, number two, that they're working, and number two, they're working for us, not for another company.
Is it true that President Zelensky is coming on Friday to meet with you, and is the mineral deal sort
sorted out.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that he's coming on Friday. Certainly, it's okay with me if he'd like to. And he would like to sign it together with me. And I understand that's a big deal, very big deal. And I think the American people, even if you look at polling, they're very happy because, you know, Biden was throwing money around like it's cotton candy. And it's a very big deal. Look, it could be $1 trillion deal. It could be whatever. But it's rare earths and other things. And look, we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on Ukraine and Russia fighting a war that should have never, ever happened. That's a war that would have never happened if I were president. And it didn't happen for 4 years. People say, how do we know that it didn't happen for 4 years? Would have never happened. And nevertheless, this guy went into this situation and he spent money like nobody's ever seen, $350 billion. The other thing that we don't like is that Europe has spent $100 billion. We've spent $350 billion. Europe gets their money back because they spent it in the form of a loan, and we just gave them, whether it's 300 or 350 billion, nobody really knows. They can't even tell me the answer to that, but it means probably more than that. So what we're doing is now we're saying, look, we want to be secured. We want to get that money back. We're helping a country through a very, very big problem, a problem like very few people have had. Shouldn't have had this problem because it shouldn't have happened, but it did happen, so we have to straighten it out. But the American taxpayer now is going to get their money back plus.
Mr. President, yesterday with Emmanuel Macron, you said you had spoken to Putin about the idea of peacekeepers in Ukraine, that Putin was fine with it. The Kremlin, I guess, has said that that's actually unacceptable to them. What's real here?
That's not what I was told. But you're going to need some form of peacekeeping, so something will be done that's going to be satisfactory to everybody. We need peacekeeping too.
Any situation
it's
where
actually
American troops involved?
it's actually something I did discuss, but a form of peacekeeping that's acceptable to everybody. Ultimately, we'll be able to agree on something. I'm sure.
With Ukraine and this mineral deal, what does Ukraine get in return, Mr. President?
$350 billion and lots of equipment, and military equipment, and the right to fight on, and originally the right to fight. Look, Ukraine, I will say they're very brave and they're good soldiers, but without the United States and its money and its military equipment, this war would have been over in a very short period of time. In fact, I was the one that gave the javelins. You remember the famous javelins? That was me. That wasn't Obama. It wasn't Biden. It wasn't anybody else. It was me. And they wiped out a lot of tanks with those javelins. And the expression was that Obama gave sheets and I gave the javelins. That was a big deal at the time. It wiped out. That was the beginning when people said, wow, that's something. Well, that was American equipment. Without American equipment, this war would have been over very quickly. And American money, too. I mean, a lot of money.
So that war-fighting equipment and the ammunition, that's sustained going forward for Ukraine, and how long is it sustained?
Well, it could go forward for a while, and maybe until we have a deal with Russia. Look, we need to have a deal with Russia, otherwise it's going to continue. But now when Americans put up their money, the taxpayer money, and the president approves it, we're getting our money back in some form. But it could go on for a while, or it could be settled quickly. I think it's going to be settled quickly. I spoke with President Putin. I think he wants to settle it. And wants to get on with life. It's horrible. What's happening horrible. Thousands of soldiers a week are being killed. And others too, but especially on the battlefield. Thousands a week are being killed. And we want that to end. Yeah, Brian?
Yes. Okay. Real quickly. Carolyn Levitt, your press secretary, sent an earthquake through that briefing room earlier today announcing that the WHCA would not have any control over placing media in the seats in the briefing room. Just want to get your thoughts on that. And also on Air Force One, it's trending on X. People are talking about it. Get your thoughts.
Well, we're going to be now calling those shots. As you know, we won that lawsuit right there. See, the Gulf of America, which is a beautiful name. Most people agree. I don't know. It's, you know, AP has been terrible. Look, I think they're radical left. I think they're third-rate reporters. I know the specific young lady that works on the account is terrible. She's a radical left lunatic, as far as I'm concerned. They don't treat us fairly. That's number one. And number two, they had no right to do that. This is the Gulf of America. And if you look at that shoreline, look at that shoreline. Look, from Florida, well, most of it is, it's called America. And vast majority, like big numbers. So I'm just admiring it as I look at it. I'm getting teary-eyed, but I don't want you to say Trump broke down and started crying. No, how beautiful is that? Look at the shoreline. Look at that.
Well,
That's America.
Can I shift our attention to Canada real quick?
Yes, please.
Last week, I spent some time with 2 government officials for Canada.
Yeah.
I was asking them how realistic is it that Canada would be the 51st state?
Yeah.
And they told me there is a path. Alberta is first, and if they sign on, Saskatchewan would follow, and then you go west to British Columbia. There is a movement in Canada to join us. I want to get your thoughts on that and how that's proceeding right now.
So it's true. Thank you, Brian. It's true. A lot of people in Canada are liking becoming our beautiful, cherished 51st state. They'll have to pay much lower taxes. They'll have the ultimate security. You know, they don't pay very much for security right now because they rely on us, which is really unfair to us. They make cars that we could make, and they send them back into the United States. They make a lot of things, including the sending of oil and everything. We don't need their oil. We don't need their lumber. In fact, we're going to be freeing up, and I've asked Howard Lutnick to get that done with Lee and everybody, Lee Zeldin, environmental. We're freeing up our forests. We're going to be able to take down trees. Right now, you know, we're so restricted environmentally. We're going to be freeing it up with an emergency order. We have an emergency order, and we're going to be freeing up our forests. We have more forests than almost anybody, and great lumber, great trees. We don't need anybody's trees. We don't need trees from Canada or anybody else. In fact, we have to put the slits, as they call them, the area, you know, 50, 60-yard area in between areas of trees. It stops the fires. And frankly, California should have been doing that for years. It's almost getting late. They're going to run out of forests the way they're going. What a shame. And by the way, the water is flowing in California. I hope you people have seen it. But the water is flowing. Do you have a picture of that? I'd hold it up. Do you have a picture of that? Get a picture of it, please. You know, we had a little skirmish in California. I can't believe we had to do that. But we opened up the water in California. The water was flowing into a place called the Pacific Ocean, which for the Pacific Ocean is only a drop. But for us, it's more water than we can use in California. So I'll get you some photographs, but it's a beautiful sight. The water is flowing in California. Beautiful water from the Pacific Northwest and beyond. And it flows down, and instead of being routed out to the Pacific Ocean, and this has been going on for 20 years more in order to take care of a certain species of fish, which wasn't doing very well without water, I can tell you. So that's a big deal. It's like not reported. It's incredible. But California has a lot of water. That's going to take care of farmers. It's going to wetten up the land. And it's going to go all the way down to Los Angeles, where they have curfews on water, where they have all sorts of blocks on water. You can only use so much. We're going to put until just recently, they were going to put a number of gallons per person living in a house in Beverly Hills on water. You're not going to have that problem anymore. Do you have a picture? Let me just see what that looks like. How beautiful is that? Look at that beautiful water flowing. Look at that. That's coming in the dikes and other means of transportation. Isn't that beautiful? Who would believe that? That's all water they could have had. I went to the governor during my first term and I said, why don't you do this? And they said they have an environmental problem with clean water. If this water were there, you wouldn't have had those fires. You had sprinklers. They make people put sprinklers in the ceiling of a home, and they had no water in them. With this, they would have had a lot of water in them. They would have all been full. They would have had you would have had a whole different deal down there. You probably wouldn't have had a fire, but if it was, it would have been small, would have been put out. You had the fire hydrants not working in California. So it's a beautiful site. These are canals that were built. These were all built. And you saw them for years. They were empty, concrete. They call them the V-shapes or the half pipes. And they're shaped different forms, but they're shaped. And they rush down through the farm areas where the farmers can take it and down to Los Angeles. And they were sitting empty for years. And now look at that way it looked. It wasn't easy. We had to be very unfriendly to get into those areas. We opened it up.
Mr. President.
I essentially attacked California. Can you believe it? I attacked California. Let's go.
At the outset of your administration, sir, you committed to ending the weaponization of government, to holding those accountable who'd participated in the weaponization of government.
Hold it. This is a good one. Is everybody listening? Deranged Jack Smith. We're going to call it the Deranged Jack Smith signing or bill. Go ahead.
One law firm that provided pro bono legal services to the special counsel's office under Jack Smith's leadership was Covington and Burling. As a result of those actions, we're now going to be suspending and putting under review the security clearances for the attorneys and employees at that firm who worked with Jack Smith's team. And we're going to continue holding the people who were responsible for the weaponization of government and who supported it accountable for what they did.
And you'll be doing this with other firms as time goes by, right?
We're looking at sort of the whole panoply of options.
The weaponization of our system by law firms, even pro bono work they're doing just in order to clog up government, stop government. And nobody knows about it more than me. And hopefully that'll never happen again.
So the Covington and Burlington?
Covington and Burlington.
Mr. President, may I ask you a question about Europe? So long term, do you plan to maintain the number of U.S. troops?
Wait, I just want to savor this one, please. Who would like this pen? Hey, why don't you send it to Jack Smith? A deranged person.
Mr. President, what do you say to people who worry that targeting an individual firm or individuals who aren't Jack Smith?
Excuse
for
me,
his actions?
I've been targeted for 4 years, longer than that. So you don't tell me about targeting. I was the target of corrupt politicians for 4 years, and then 4 years after that. So don't talk to me about targeting. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. President, there are approximately 2 million federal employees right now. By the end of your term, what do you expect that number to be? What would you like that number to be?
Well, it'll be lower, but I can't tell you. Everybody knows I ran on downsizing government, but making government better. I ran on tariffs and making our country rich, and that's what it's going to do. We're going to be doing something else that's going to be very, very good. We're going to be selling a gold card. You have a green card. This is a gold card. We're going to be putting a price on that card of about $5 million, and that's going to give you green card privileges plus. It's going to be a route to citizenship, and wealthy people will be coming into our country by buying this card. They'll be wealthy, and they'll be successful, and they'll be spending a lot of money and paying a lot of taxes and employing a lot of people. And we think it's going to be extremely successful. Never been done before or anything like this, but it's something that we're going to be putting out over the next, would you say 2 weeks, Howard? Do you want to say a couple of words about it?
Sure.
Mr. President, are there
Wait a
any
minute.
requirements for that gold
Hang on a
card?
second.
Do you have to invest a certain amount of money in this country in order to qualify for that gold card?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Go
the
ahead.
EB-5 program was really, you lend some money, but it was full of nonsense, make-believe, and fraud, and it was a way to get a green card that was low-priced. So the president said, rather than having this sort of ridiculous EB-5 program, we're going to end the EB-5 program. We're going to replace it with the Trump Gold Card, which is really a green card gold. So they'll be able to pay $5 million to the U.S. government. They'll have to go through vetting, of course. We're going to make sure they're wonderful, world-class global citizens. They can come to America. The president can give them a green card, and they can invest in America, and we can use that money to reduce our deficit. Why do we give out lotteries of green cards? Why do we give out EB-5 for green cards? The President of the United States understands that the right answer is, why don't we eliminate the deficit of the United States of America instead?
The gold card, well, millions, but the gold card will bring in with it people that create jobs, very high-level people. I think companies will pay to get people in. For instance, you today graduate from the Wharton School of Finance or Harvard or Stanford or any college, and nobody knows if you can even go to work for a company. So Apple and all these companies that want to get people to be working for them will be able to buy a card. And for the people that are number one in their class at top schools, I see that as one of the things. But generally speaking, it'll be people with money and people that create jobs. And they won't have to pay any tax on income outside of the United States, which they're not paying right now. They're not citizens. But they'll have to pay, if they create jobs in the United States, they'll pay full taxes like everybody else. So you're getting big taxpayers, big job producers, and we'll be able to sell maybe 1 million of these cards, maybe more than that. And if you add up the numbers, they're pretty good. As an example, 1 million cards would be worth $5 trillion. $5 trillion.
Wow.
And if you sell 10 million of the cards, that's a total of $50 trillion. Well, we have 35 trillion in debt. That'd be nice. So we'll see. But it could be great. Maybe it will be fantastic. We have it all worked out from the legal standpoint. It's totally legal to do. Hasn't been done before. It's been done in many different forms. We give them away. Why should we give them away? We shouldn't give them away. And I think it's something very exciting. I think it's potentially just something that we're all very excited about. So it's a gold card. It's somewhat like a green card, but at a higher level of sophistication. It's a road to citizenship for people. And essentially people of wealth or people of great talent, where people of wealth pay for those people of talent to get in, meaning companies will pay for people to get in and to have long-term status in the country. And I think it's something we're very, very happy about. Would you have anything to say about that?
Well, many other countries, by the way, do this, including, of course, your 51st state does that.
And the money's earmarked for deficit reduction?
It may be earmarked for deficit, but it actually could be more money than that. I mean, if you did 10 million, you'd have $15 trillion left over. But generally, it's going to be paid down debt, yes.
Do you need Congress for this? Do you think you need
No,
to
we
pass
don't
a
need
law?
Congress, no, because we're not doing citizenship, we're doing the card. It's a path to citizenship, a very strong path to citizenship, but we're not doing the citizenship. For that, I'd have to get Congress.
And would all countries be eligible for this gold card?
Depends. The countries largely, the people will be vetted very carefully.
Mr. President, on Ukraine, would you provide military support for Ukraine in the future under a peace agreement?
Say it again louder.
Would you provide military support for Ukraine in the future as part
You mean
of
like
a peace
security?
agreement? Yeah.
Well, people are going to do it. I think Europe will largely be responsible for that.
But
European countries will be responsible.
But Macron asked for a U.S. backup.
Well, we'll see. I mean, right now we're just in the process of negotiating. We've pretty much negotiated our deal on raw earth and various other things. We'll be looking at that security. You're talking about general security for Ukraine later on. I don't think that's going to be a problem. There are a lot of people that want to do it. And I spoke with Russia about it. They didn't seem to have a problem with it. So I think they understand. They're not going back in. Once we do this, they're not going back in.
So would you consider
on that gold card,
aircraft? Would the U.S. provide, for instance, air defense?
Well, I just told you, right now we're not providing anything. You know, it's about Europe, too. Europe put in $100 billion, and we put in $350 billion. It's not a fair thing. You know, we would normally say, and I say it now anyway, but we want equalization. They should put up actually more money than us because they're right there. We have an ocean in between. But we've had very good talks with Russia. We've had very good talks with Ukraine, and we think it maybe will come to an end and we'll stop killing young people all over the battlefield and elsewhere.
On Europe, so do you plan to maintain heavy military presence in Europe in the long term, like tens of thousands of troops?
We'll be
do you want
involved.
to withdraw some?
Yeah, we'll be involved in Europe. We're involved in Europe now. Europe is our friend. They take advantage of us on trade. We don't like that. What the EU does, we don't like that. But we'll solve that the old-fashioned way. We'll give them the same reciprocal numbers. You know, we're talking about a reciprocal tax. You know that. And if they charge us, we charge them. Right now, they charge us much, much more than we charge them. And they have non-monetary taxes also and tariffs. And we're going to change that. It's all changing. It's all changing. We're not going to be the the people that we were. We had people in this office sitting right at this desk or another model of this desk, because as you know, the other desk is right now being refurbished.
Is Steve Witkoff delaying his trip to the Middle East?
No, not that I know of. No, Steve. And the Middle East has been great. Saudi Arabia has treated us really well. They really have. And I think Qatar has treated us very well too. They want to get that whole mess ended in the Middle East. You know, we don't even talk about that anymore. You guys haven't asked one question about the Middle East, but the Middle East seems to be doing relatively well.
May I ask about the Middle East, sir, about the Middle East? For months, even before you were elected in November, you've spoken about your desire to free all of those hostages that have been held by Hamas since October the 7th, a year and a half ago. And just a few weeks ago, you gave an ultimatum. You said if they're not all released by noon on February the 15th, there would be hell to pay. Is Hamas thumbing their nose at you, Mr. President?
No, I think the opposite. So, as you know, they weren't going to release any more hostages. And I said there's going to be hell to pay. And then they agreed that they were going to release the hostages that they had agreed to release, plus an extra one. And so that you could say that was a big difference. But I said it from that point, it's up to Bibi, Netanyahu, and Israel. I may have taken a different stance. But they did release, they went back to releasing the hostages. But if you remember, they said we weren't going to release any. They've totally ended it. And I said, well, they're not going to release any. They'll be held to pay. And but the rest is really up to him. What I may have done it differently than him. It's not my decision. It's his decision. But they did release all of those hostages. So.
Mr. President, when you spoke to Vladimir Putin, did he raise or did you discuss at all the possibility of a minerals deal on the Ukrainian land that Russia now controls?
I didn't discuss it, no. I'd like to buy minerals on Russian land, too, if we can. The rare earth. They have very good rare earth also. They both do. I would say that. And oil and gas. Look, it's a great thing. If we sell this, it's great for Russia, too, because we can do deals there. They have very valuable land that isn't utilized. So something like that could take place, yeah.
Have you put raising or lifting sanctions against Russia on the table as your
No, we haven't lifted any sanctions on
Is it
anybody.
on the table as part of any negotiation?
Well, I guess it will be at some point, but right now we haven't agreed to lift sanctions on anybody.
On that gold card, getting back to that, I'm fascinated by this, Mr. President.
You should be fascinated by it. Your taxes will go down to nothing.
Would a Russian oligarch be eligible for a gold card?
Yeah, possibly. Hey, I know some Russian oligarchs that are very nice people. It's possible. They're not quite as wealthy as they used to be. They're not as wealthy as they used to be. I think they can afford. I think they can afford $5 million.
So they have
No, a lot of people are going to want
and yet they would be eligible.
to. A lot of people are going to want to be in this country, and they'll be able to work and provide jobs and build companies and pay taxes. All of those things. It's an incredible. It's an incredible thing. I mean, this is the group that is the first to hear it. Nobody's heard about it. Nobody ever thought about it, but we've been thinking about it very, very strongly over the last week. And I was going to announce it sometime next week, and I figured, why not? We have a lot of cameras blazing right now. We might as well do it now. We'll have Caroline announce it the next time. No, it's a great thing. The gold card. Remember the words, the gold card. Somebody said, can we call it the Trump gold card? I said, if it helps, use the name Trump. I'll give it to you for free.
I like it. Mr. President, you probably just launched 10,000 stories. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on what Russian oligarchs you know?
I know. Isn't it interesting how many stories we do tell? And they all turn out to be true, and they all turn out to be ultimately correct. You know, Trump was right about everything. Do you have one of those Trump was right about everything hats? I'm going to give it to this gentleman. Get me one of them.
But they're all going to be vetted. Everybody who comes in gets vetted, okay? They get vetted, so you got to, you know. We're going to begin in 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks. The sale will start in about 2 weeks.
Mr. President, do you see a more active role for Zelensky now, given the status?
I hope so. I mean, look, I think that we want to get that country back on its feet. And right now, it's been destroyed. And so, here, give me this here. Give me all of them. Look. See that? Trump was right about everything. It just came in. Somebody sent it. I said, this was sent in by a fan. I said, I think we should make some of them, right? but we were pretty much. You want one?
I'll pass.
Are you allowed to take one?
No,
Because
not.
he'll consider it. I know him
President,
well.
I'll take one.
He's sort of a stiff.
And that was President Trump at the Oval Office moments ago, taking reporter questions as well as signing executive orders. He did also mention that the United States will be launching a new residency pathway to the United States being a citizen. It's going to be called the Gold Card. So you have the green card and you have the Gold Card. It's going to sell for $5 million and it could get you a path to being a citizen of the United States. And thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. Stay with us for NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern Time and 3 p.m. Pacific.